the last meeting of the Society for the year, as we don't hold a monthly meeting in December because of the holidays, so please don't turn up in the third Wednesday of December. Right, and we'll try and whip through the annual general AGM business first of all, as quickly as we can, and then on to the normal meeting. Right, so first of all, apologies for the meeting. I think John Leggett's taking the minutes. We have apologies from a number of people. There's Neil Houston, Sally Zeta, Bruce Tregascus, Richard Pollard and Phil Stelling. Send their apologies for the AGM. The previous minutes of the AGM were over on the table over there if you wish to look at them at any stage during tonight, if you so wish you may. And there's also the Treasurer's report covering the previous year as well. I'd like to ask that someone move that the minutes be accepted, who's actually read them. Accepted David, or move David, and seconded please. Seconded by John Clifton. Those in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. Despite some troublemakers, aren't there? Right, well that's the minutes. We'll now move on to the President's report. I think was the next one. President's report 2001. Right, well the Society's membership has actually started to grow again after we received a bit of a hit after the GST was introduced. Obviously people considered membership of an astronomical society as a luxury they couldn't afford when GST came in. Membership is 167 at the moment, but 20 of those are yet to renew, so potentially that could drop down to 147. And that was compared with 152 this time last year. Now, so far this year, we've done 32 viewing nights, either public or school. It's the most the Society's ever done in 1 year. And we've seen about 2,025 people, according to our head count so far. In talking to quite a few. There's been January viewing nights at the Prize, 4 of those. We did the first Friday public nights at the Prize every month. We did Coast Action Group at the Prize, Mount Martha Primary, Camberwell Grammar, Rosebud High School, St Francis CC Primary, Langwarren Park Primary, St Kilda Primary, St Catherine's Primary, Bisson Primary, St Michael's Primary, Western Port Brisbane School, Blackrock Primary, Croydon Hills Primary, Bank Primary, Thomas Mitchell Primary, and the most recent one was Resurrection Primary. And yet to come this year, we've got 2 viewing nights at Kingsley Park Primary, one of which is tomorrow night, and we desperately need telescopes for that, and also next week's one as well. We've got Parkdale Secondary that's bussing themselves down to the Prize later on early December. We've got the monthly Friday at the Prize, 2 nights for Dorinia Primary at the Prize, and we've also got 5 more viewing nights booked in 2002 already. So we've got lots and lots this year, so we're raising quite a bit of funds for the Society for development of the observatory. Right, developments during the year. Well, when I stood here last year, I said, well, with 2001 Space Odyssey coming on, we'll probably see the appearance of a black monolith at the Prize of dimensions 1 is to 4 is to 9. Well, we never actually got to see that, unfortunately, during the year because no one took the initiative. We did, however, put together a time capsule which is waiting for burial at the Christmas party for putting into the Prize site. We began regularly advertising our presence in the local papers, and we had an entry in the white and yellow pages. We had a couple of successful grant applications for proper carousel projectors for use at school halls and things like that. The Society's web pages continue to grow, and the site was moved to a new web address that had fewer restrictions on it. The Lone Telescope was refurbished a bit. We opened up the Aurora telephone network to other societies and universities, so it's not only ASF members in there, there are others outside as well. Water and electricity were connected at the observatory at the Prize, so it's all the systems go there for moving ahead. We had a water tank donated, and it's up on site at the Prize as well, and we had all those marauding cows at the Prize. And we had those again fairly recently as well. They actually walked straight through the fence. The fence popped back up. It was seen by one of our members. Meetings, we continued the multiple information segments, as you'll see as we go through the meeting afterwards. We've continued basically with the format the members have asked for in the past, with parallel sessions where you have to decide which one you want to go to after tea time. We started videotaping the meetings, and the camera's on over there if Jim doesn't actually give it a bump or stick his head in front of it. And the idea of that is for those that miss the meetings, they can actually then borrow it from the library at a later date if they wish to. Okay, well, we've had talks during the year by myself, Ian Porter, Barry Adcock, Peter Lowe, Doug Gardner on astronavigation, Peter Norman, David Girling and Marty Rudd. The library is continuing to expand. We got 16 new books and videos during the year through the sale of Astronomy 2001. The raffles continued, care of David Girling. Social activities, well, we have now 4 members' nights a month, theoretically, on the Friday and Saturday either side of New Moon. There was an equinox dinner during the year at Kirkpatrick's. There was 10-pin bowling arranged. There was the inaugural annual ASF Scope Day that was started by David Girling, and we'll keep that going each year. There was a planetarium bus trip where we bussed all the members who wanted to come in 3 buses up to the planetarium. Vastrop was on, and we sent several speakers up there to take part in that convention. There's been monthly working bees and 3 barbecues that were actually introduced at the prize for those that turn up at the working bees, so you get a bit of a feed afterwards, and they seem to be rather successful. Christmas break-up is coming up soon, and the What's On that is over on the side there tells you all the details about what's coming up. If you haven't got one, pick one up any time later in the evening. Phenomena-wise, during 2001, there was a meeting of Graham Blow from New Zealand, the Royal Astronomical Society of New Zealand, the professional astronomical society there, came over and met with all the occupation group members in Victoria. There was a successful lunar grazing expedition to Belinda, where we worked with other societies. There was the Great Aurora of March 31st, that was about a once-in-a-century aurora, at least at our latitude, which was captured on film by a number of members. Ian Sullivan actually travelled off to the solar eclipse, and he's here at the front, and he survived going into deepest, darkest Africa to see the moon cover the sun. And of course the great Leonids meteor storm of November 19, and I'm sure there are more tales of that to come later in the meeting. So that's the President's report. Next on the agenda is the Treasurer's reports, and the Treasurer's report is sitting over there. Can I actually ask that someone move that they be accepted? Moved by David Girling, seconded by John Leggett. Those in favour? Those against? Okay, carried unanimously. Right, now down to the election of the 2002 committee. Right, well, I declare all positions on committee vacant as of now. I'd like to thank the outgoing committee. Richard Pollard, who's not here, was the Vice President. He also presents for the Society on the radio every now and again. He's a speaker at many of the schools and public nights. He's editor of the newsletter Scorpius. He also moderates the Eastern Australia Meteor Network and East Scorpius on email, those that are on those groups within the Society. Secretary was Sally Zeta, who also staples and posts all the Scorpius newsletters. She also organised the Plano trip and liaises with the Peninsula School here when we have difficulty with equipment and that sort of thing, so quite a difficult thing to do. And she's on the social subcommittee. Treasurer's role was performed by Bob Hill, who's here tonight earlier in the year, and then taken over a little bit later by Neil Hewson. And both of those were treasurers and GST gurus out of necessity. Bob put together Sky for the Month, which we'll be giving a little bit later as well, and hands out his monthly handouts for members. Also, the Treasurer's job is chasing up errant schools as well that fail to pay for their viewing nights or give the appropriate donation. John Goodall was also on the committee, and he makes sure that we get a regular mention in the local newspapers. He's also the webmaster of the Society's web pages. He's a GIS guru, and he prepares the What's On that are being handed out each meeting. Ian Sullivan's also on the committee at the front here. He does his regular segment. We'll hear a little bit from him later on. And he helps coordinate the annual calendar, which will appear in the next newsletter, as well as duplicating videos and getting hold of videos in various interesting ways. Marty Rudd, who's not here tonight, I guess he's not back from his Leonids trip yet to Central Australia. He also gives a segment every now and again. helps to build the meteor observing group, which has really been growing in the last year, particularly. So it's got a lot of members interested in meteors. He donated a water tank and is on the observatory subcommittee. Russell Thompson, who is here tonight, was the public officer during the year, which means he's the one that we shoot when something goes wrong, officially. And, oh, didn't we tell you that? And he's also been helping making sure that we get regular entries in the local newspapers as well, telling of upcoming public nights. And last member of the committee was Peter Lowe, who's also in tonight, and he's spoken at the odd public night, but he's been a bit of an invisible man this year because of his studying habits at the moment. Right, okay, well, since we don't have any positions filled at the moment, we have had nominations in for all positions, and the nominations received by the Secretary were as follows. Myself put in for President again, no one else stepped forward. David Girling has nominated for Vice President, Sally went for Secretary again. Treasurer Neil Hewson, Public Officer Don Leggett. Ordinary members were John Cleverton, Ian Sullivan, Marty Rudd, Russell Thompson and Jane McConnell, and Richard Pollard stuck his hand up to keep doing the editorship of the newsletter as well. So, I mean, I declare all those elected unopposed, as there were no more than one per vacancy there. The various subcommittees are assigned by committee, and so their membership is sort of ratified by the next coming in committee, such that they're not put up to the vote. Okay, so I declare that committee for 2002 elected, and thank them for offering. It's good to see two women actually on committee for a change, and we hope to actually get it up to almost 50-50 in the long run, even though we got it up to two out of 9 at the moment. Right, okay, well that was next one down was the special business notified, which was in the newsletter before the last one that went out. And in essence, all it is the highlighted bits. We've before the modification, that's what the Constitution read. And I do have a copy of the Constitution if anyone's interested in wading through it any time later on. Essentially, the changes are at the moment when our Constitution was first put together. The standard fine that can be imposed on an errant member for one reason or another was $20, but that was $20 as in 1980 sort of dollars. The current one that the Office of Fair Trading recommends is $300, so we've upped that to the standard fine that can be imposed. I've never known it to be imposed, but it's just sort of sitting there as a bit of a stick.
Do we have GST on that?
Do I have GST on that? Good point, I didn't think of that. And the other one was to insert in the wording an additional thing such that it includes things such as racial, sexual vilification and other forms of abuse as well as something that can actually be disciplined. Not that we've ever had to do anything like that. Right, okay. Well, with that, can I ask that those changes be accepted in the Constitution? Nominated by David Heale, seconded. Russell Thompson. Those in favour? Those against? Unanimous. Okay, move on to the next one. We're going like the quackers at the moment. Other thanks. I'd like to thank David Girling for all the work that he's done, especially not being on committee as such. He's liaised with the Briars on the Briars subcommittee. He runs a monthly raffle, and we'll see some great prizes tonight. He runs his regular segment, which we'll hear more about, and he's also been helping build the Meteor network, as well as introducing some video astronomy as well for the society. So we're starting to move in the field of CCD cameras now. Also, Roger Giller, sitting at the front here, for his regular segments, and we'll see another colourful one tonight. There's been a bit of auroral activity, I believe. He's the coordinator of our Southern Australia Aurora network, which is the telephone alert network for Aurorian. Thanks also to Don Leggett, who's also liaises with the Briars. He's on the social subcommittee and puts together the supper at public nights at the moment. Also other regular segment presenters is Ian Porter, who's not here tonight, and Bruce Chagaskis, who's also away tonight as well. Also I'd like to thank another member on the Observatory Subcommittee, Jeremy Scott, who's quietly sitting up there, not expecting to be mentioned. He's our tool maker extraordinaire, who will have a great burden helping to put together the observatory this year, this coming year. I'd also like to thank Cole Moser at the front and Peter Norman for the unsung heroes of putting together supper, as you'll appreciate tonight after the meeting breaks for the tea break halfway through. And some more thanks. During the year there was Kathy Stagg, who I think her health is not too good still at the moment, who was librarian earlier in the year and then was taken over kindly by Andrew Thornton at the back there, and Jane McConnell, who's not back from Ayers Rock yet, running the library. Ken Bryant, who I don't think's here yet either, for photocopying the newsletter, which takes quite a few hours standing at the Frankston Council's photocopier to actually produce that, let me tell you. And also all the public flyers that we hand out as well. I'd like to thank all the contributors to the newsletter, particularly the prolific Renato, who seems to write about every gadget under the sun, and probably has them all at home. And I'd especially like to thank all the numerous members who come along to the school viewing nights and public viewing nights, because without that we wouldn't be able to do the viewing nights without all the telescopes there. And without doing those viewing nights, we wouldn't have the money to actually start building things at the Briars and getting things moving. And lastly, but also quite importantly, those that kindly assist by transporting other members to these meetings. Right, well at that, I'll close the AGM. I'm 2 minutes and 28 seconds over time. So that's the end of the AGM for the year. Right. On to the general meeting business, which is the usual format that we have. Okay, well, I'd like to start off by congratulating the milestone achievers. We have Jane McConnell, who I mentioned before is not back from Ayers Rock yet. Has just achieved her 3-year milestone for being in the Society. Those of you who are new to the Society or are visitors tonight, if and when you do join, you'll get a name tag. Please wear the name tag so other people can know who you are. And it helps helps build conversations between people. If you don't have a name tag, see John at the front here, who will put his hand up in the air, and he'll gladly get one made for your next meeting, if you are a member. There's the raffle going around tonight, which is $1. If Dave, you want to hold up what the prize is? Yep. Looks fantastic.
We have our end of year good prize, or better prize than normal, and this year is Space Encyclopedia, and it's a $65 value, and kindly donated by Anne Sullivan, a bottle of port for second prize. $1 a ticket, but I suggest you probably buy 2 or 3 tickets, and I hope you win it. So I'll send that around. And just take the first part, just rip the first part up as a $1 a ticket. I'll send it, thank you.
And I'll also hand around the usual idea and suggestion box, and also if you have any questions of an astronomical nature or any other nature that you can relate to astronomy, feel free to scribble them down anonymously if you wish, and we'll try and answer them either at a future meeting or in the newsletter, or we'll take you to one side in the dark and explain it to you. Right. Okay, now during the previous month, the Society visited Thomas Mitchell Primary School. We expected about 100 odd kids there, and it turned out that there were 270. So we got a little bit of a surprise on that. Not half the surprise when we realised that it was pouring with rain outside, and so they wouldn't get to see anything through the telescope. So we kept talking to them until they dropped, and they seemed pretty happy given that it was raining outside. We also did Resurrection Primary. There's 70 kids up at the Briars Education Centre, and they had 95% cloud as well, unfortunately. Also during the month there was a public viewing night at the Briars where we had 30 present, and there was absolutely no cloud there. In fact, it was surprising that there weren't more there given that the Leonids were coming up. And it's just very unfortunate the local papers left the publicity putting in the Leonids until about 1 week too late. We sent it in nice and early, but unfortunately they held it off. And in fact, one of them, the Standard, the leader across the peninsula, didn't put it in at all. They deemed that no one would be interested in it, unfortunately. Tut, tut, tut. Right, any happenings at the Brides that have been mentioned? Any worth mentioning, John?
No, except on that, what Simon said, the working bees mowing. Neil will be unhappy about that. It's really good to see.
Okay, that's fine. I'll also hand around the roster for doing the viewing nights. The viewing nights are all out to end of January, so if you can put your name down for that, particularly any tomorrow or next Monday at Kingsley Park, as we only have 2 telescopes, and one of those is even only 1 telescope. So if you can come with a telescope, please drop your name on it as it goes around.
Is that the one off Robinson's Road?
It's off Franciscan Avenue.
Which is off Robinson's
Which
Road.
is off Robinson's Road, yeah. In Frankston Heights. Right. There's a Lunar Grays expedition that's coming up on November the 24th, which is this Saturday, I think, which will be somewhere between St Kilda, Heale and Eildon, wherever it's nice and dark to see the moon. It's at 8:40 in the evening, so a nice respectable hour. For those of you who have a telescope and wish to come along on that one. The magnitude is 7.9 star, so you'll probably need somewhere around a 4-inch diameter telescope to pick that one up. If you are interested in participating in one of these, come and see me anytime tonight. Also, minor planet occultations. Were you going to mention the one? Okay, there's one coming up tomorrow night at 9:35 p.m. of minor planet 1173 and Anchises, and it's the best one probably till about the end of the year. It's an 11.9 magnitude star, which means you're probably going to need a 6-inch telescope to be able to see it, but it's coming right over Port Phillip Bay. Now with the Leonids, I assume those, you're going to talk about the Leonids a bit, are you? We had various reports in. For example, Jamie Connell went up to Uluru, and Richard Pollard and Phil Snelling went up to Alice Springs with a few others, I think probably Marty Rudd and Adam as well, I think, Karen Marsh. David Girling and I went to Woomera, quite independently of each other, had no idea. Sorry? Oh yeah, you went as well, okay, Don. Yep. And Roger went north as well, and not sure if you saw what the weather was like at the time, but I made the decision to go to Woomera when I saw these. Hopefully we'll see that when I turn the lights out. This is actually the weather prediction for the Saturday night, the Sunday night and the Monday night. So it's going to be somewhere between this and this. Anything that's orange was the prediction that it wasn't going to be rainy or cloudy. Green, you could forget about it on the prediction, because you would be completely under it. So on late Sunday night, you can see the various spots that I considered. There was Broken Hill, there was Mildura just there, which was no good according to the forecast. Broken Hill was very, very iffy because it was only just inside.
Broken Hill was clear as a bell.
So I'm told it was clear as a bell. So Broken Hill was actually going to be my first choice, but having looked at this map, I gave up on Broken Hill. Adelaide was no good, being under the cloud there. Ceduna was very tempting because of the solar eclipse there next year. And Woomera was also tempting. Up here at Alice Springs and Ayers Rock, as you can see, it's very close to that, and I thought, oh, even they may have a bit of difficulty. Particularly when you looked at the forecast for the Monday and you saw Alice Springs and Ayers Rock as being under cloud or rain. Ceduna and Woomera was still clear at that stage, and Broken Hill would have cleared up as would have Mildura, probably too late at that stage. So on the strength of that, I packed up and went up to Woomera. Okay, well, at that, maybe if we can go into the first segment. David, you want to go first? Followed by Roger and Bob. Yeah.
Okay, Peter's just talked about Leonids. No doubt a lot of you would have seen the meteor shower. A lot of people went in different directions. There was about 35, I think, at Alice. And there was 3 of us in Woomera, as we found out. And I think there was a couple of people who competed. They were everywhere. Everyone scattered everywhere. Rates, it was really hard to predict how many the rates. Don and I suggest there was a meteor every second in the sky, but we haven't got eyes in the back of our head either. So, there could have been more, but rates were anything. People were saying 2,000 an hour, 1,000 an hour. I had a quick calculation today, and I think at one stage at Aurora we were at 14,000 an hour. but that's a zenith hourly rate, and we didn't actually see that many an hour, but that would have been a zenith hourly rate. And the best sort of, it was really took off just after 1700 UT. At 1715 UT, it was just crazy for the next hour and a half. And even in heavy twilight and even daylight, you could see meteors. I mean, we were seeing flashes in very heavy twilight, as probably a lot of you were. And I hope all those that took my advice earlier on in the year and decided to go somewhere did and enjoy the event. We have a couple of pictures to show. Oh, this one? Yes. Should be straight on. That works. We don't need any. That works.
The red one for sure, one other one.
There we go. Alright, now, this is not we only took a print film, we didn't have any slide film. So, it doesn't come up that well, honestly. Okay. This is from Don Leggett. There's one there, you can see. One further up, just about there. Right. And I can actually see them a lot better down here. But yeah, and that's a time exposure. I don't know, Don might have been 5-10 minutes, something like that. Yeah, maybe a little bit more. That one. I'll get the best of it. There's some there on the side. Here. There's a couple there. Meteors are very hard to photograph. They've got to be very bright to show up on film, and I think anything below that first magnitude doesn't really show up that well. And here we are. You can see there's actually a Heale on the film. There's one there. There's one there and a bright one there. And there's the top of the truck. We were 30 kilometres north of Woomera, about 100 metres off the road, doing forward driving across some rocks and things to see if we can get a good spot. It was cold, it was windy, it was so windy it was not funny. We're actually using the truck as a bit of a protection. So I think it adds to the effect there. There's a couple there. One there, one there. And there's actually one there about to chase up. You can see that one? Yes. Okay. That's pretty good because you have a look at the star trails on that. Not very many at all, and there's probably at least 3 good meteors in that shot, and I reckon you could change the way that's been processed and maybe get some more out of that. The most we saw in the sky, I said to Don, I'd love to see more than 2 meteors in the sky at once. Well, I got to 6 at once, but then there probably was more if I could have a better vision. And obviously there's a couple there. So they're the ones Don took. The ones I took myself, I don't think they were as good at times. A bit harder to see. There's one there. Not showing up that well in this light. There's actually 2 on this film. There's one in the corner. And there's one there. Hard to see. Flatten it out, doesn't work. I took a few shots from a different location. That's not in Woomera, that's in a place called Udunda. And that was a couple of hours after sunset. What did we say that was? I think it was Zodiac light or something similar. Yeah, it was just a bright beam of light came off the western horizon about 3 hours after sunset, and I thought I must take a picture of that, so that's what that was. I tried a different exposure, and it sort of just didn't quite show as much. So last. And when we were in Udunda, we had sunset, and we had later on, so you actually doesn't show up very well in this photo, it's a pity. That was a little bit later. And it doesn't show up very well, but it was interesting to see the horizon is there, and part of the Southern Cross has gone below the horizon. In this part of the world, the Southern Cross doesn't actually set, but up north of Adelaide, it does set. And the point is along the horizon. I show this to everyone, they say, geez, that's a great meteor shot. But if anyone knows a little bit about the night sky, they'll know that's not a meteor, that's the International Space Station coming across. I always like to show that because that's the brightest picture I have. There's sunrise in Seduna, not Seduna, in Udunda. So it actually looks a lot better in the photo. And last but not least, the best one I took was that one there. Probably everyone might recognise the constellation there. Southern Cross, that actually does look a bit better. It goes from there all the way down the photo to right in there. It was visually a lot brighter than that. Yeah, so that was the storm, which a lot of you would have seen. As I say, rates from all over Australia were varied. We heard lots of people on the radio carrying on what they thought was better than they saw than anyone else, but I think it really didn't matter where you were. It was the best meteor shower there's ever been since '66, and it may never happen again because of the way Jupiter has pulled the comet around a little bit. We may never go through those particle streams again, but we won't go through the next one, they suggest. We may go through one in 90 odd years' time, but they're not 100% sure. But that's a bit so far down the future, we're all going to be down that side of the ground. So I hope we'll be happy for everyone that went out and did some observing. I know some people observed in Melbourne, and Sue Stoner observed the Tuparuku saw a 50 in the hour. She was obviously lucky, a little bit of cloud spread for us at 50 in an hour, so that was pretty good for her. Count-wise, as I say, everyone was trying to count them. There's too many in the sky to count. I did one count, and I was sort of 120 in 10 minutes, and Don said, well, you were missing about 2 or 3 every time you were counting one, so I gave up counting. I just had to explain what we were seeing in the night sky. So, did everyone see? Did people see it, obviously? Yeah.
Hands up those who didn't.
Hands up who didn't see it. Oh, everyone. Oh,
Saw a great cloud.
great. Yeah, that's a problem. Well, it was well worth the trip. We travelled approximately 2,200 kilometres. A lot of people flew to Alice, all that sort of thing. 98 I thought was exceptional, and it was different than 98. 98 was full of fireballs, and they were so bright they were always lighting the ground up. These ones were a lot fainter, but there was so many more. And I don't suggest I'll go meteor observing again, because I don't think I'll ever see that again. So any other sort of meteor observing I do will be pretty disappointing. All right, well, thank you for that. Thanks for that, Dave.
We'll let Roger look everything up. My wife Ros here in Frankston, right in the middle of Frankston, actually saw 15 fireballs during the evening. Yeah. And some of those were quite spectacular in that they broke up into several fragments as they went across the sky, sort of skipping across the sky through.
What day is that?
Sorry?
When was that?
That was the Monday morning, about 4 o'clock in the morning. And I also got a report on the Society's telephone by someone that was phoning up, and someone from Murchison phoned us up to ask what was going on. And she actually noted that it seemed to hit an object and blow up in mid-air like a nuclear explosion in a great flash of green that stayed for some time. I just can't explain it. Can you? Well, we haven't replied yet.
Had she seen a nuclear explosion? What did she do drinking?
The skylights for the month. I'm going to cheat because I'm going to show some different sort of skylights from what I usually show. You'll have to excuse the greenness. I sort of came back, put these into the processors lunchtime Monday, got them back lunchtime yesterday, and they're all green. And that from the fellas that obviously machines try to bring out something visible up and stars, so I've got to get back into the reprocessed or run them through Photoshop and sort of massage them. But these were taken with a 28mm lens, Kodak Max 400 film, and they've been scanned in. And a couple of meteors in that one. Excuse the funny angles. I just took the telescope and took the telescope rings in the off it and sort of just bolt the camera to it, drill the holes in and put a bolt through it, sort of tripod bolt. That's the horizon there in the bottom corner.
They meet the right trails there?
Yeah, the wriggling one's a bit of dust, which we also get taken out sometime. I observed from Ngambie. It was the case of being able to get up at midnight, so after having to sleep in the afternoon and having gone to bed again at about 8:30 on Sunday night, and get up at 12:30, drive for 2 hours from Berwick and end up in Ngambie, just beside Ngambie at the Mitchelton Winery. actually, just near there, in that space. And just a couple lots of sort of little tracks which go off from the vineyards there, and that's so plenty of dirt roads where you won't get disturbed. So just walk beside there and that. Sit my lounge chair out and telescope out. I had it arranged so that I could actually count meteors and work the camera so without having to get up. So I could do it all by feel. I could sort of, while I was sort of watching it, recock the camera, move them around, start the next exposure and stop it again 5 minutes later or whatever. So I'll be able to make some time with the eyes on the sky. Closely overexposed Jupiter there. So yeah, I've got some meteor trails. Once I get the photos cleaned up, there might be something worthwhile seeing there.
Was there no cloud up there?
No cloud. That was the whole idea, to travel north of the divide. The wind was onshore. It was blowing in from Bass Strait. Cloud, it was coastal showers. People say it cleared and got clouded, cleared and got clouded. As soon as you get that sort of weather, you get north of the divide, and you get past Seymour, and you drop down, and it was just perfectly clear all night. I thought it was worth a 2-hour drive. I counted meteors and I sort of then bin them up into 5-minute periods, and the number in each 5-minute period up to 25 there in one occasion. And I haven't had time to do some proper work on putting it out, so this is just counting minutes from 3:18 a.m. This peak's showing up around about 17:45 UT roughly. It's the peak level. It's about 4:45 local time. About 4:30 I don't know when the tape so I could see the first of the dawn in the sky. So it was right over in the east, and it just got progressively brighter, which is why the rates dropped off nearly enough. It possibly would have really gone up faster than that from what I expected to go. There's just 10-minute bin, the button 10-minute bins, and if you take there at about 50 meteors there in a 10-minute bin, it's about 300 an hour sort of thing, and now it's just me looking by myself, sky getting brighter, so I'll submit these observations and work out the rates on them. So, now, auroras. Yeah, we had crystal magnetic fields and flares and the usual sort of things that give rise to auroras. Not long after last meeting, October 21st, around the time they arrived in the meteor shower, and they had lots of auroras visible in the northern hemisphere, and the usual things where we get the second one over there, we've been playing this, and so I didn't have time to sort of finish off this presentation because I was worried about the getting some meteor stuff. Solar wind speed, shock passage, it hits the Earth, and you get a display of northern lights in the northern hemisphere. That photo was. That was taken from Paris, though, in France. Canada. So the house there with the moon. And it's a bright sky, and you can still see auroras over the house there. Moon setting and Mars above the house. Funny. This is all from this photo of Canada. This guy in France takes quite a few photos. You see that tree pop up in quite a few other photos on the web. That little green knot up there in the up the fork of the tree. A bit unusual. And star trials around the pole. The auroras, dark red down the horizon. All very colourful. USA. That windmill's quite often used as a prop, it's set up fairly often. Nice rays and curtains there. This was the weekend after the last meeting. There was a display that weekend, there was a display the following weekend, and there was a display the weekend after that, which was November 5th and 6th.
Only in the northern hemisphere?
The one the weekend after this was visible down here, and I think there was something went around the network. I didn't get caught. I didn't get caught on it. Nice over in Corona there. The lake makes a nice foreground. Very, very colourful. Foreground there, just use a flash to illuminate the foreground. People were just sort of, static on all the things that come up on the web for these even people. That was one from South Australia. From the National Society of South Australia. Clouds and rain squall view about 9 p.m. local time. And so that on that weekend, October 22nd, there was visible from South Australia. Was that the weekend that you got yours?
I got one on the 22nd.
22nd, yeah, that's the weekend, yeah.
At 4:30 in the morning.
At 4:30 in the morning, yeah. And apparently the network started off on after midnight on that, so I didn't get called. Apparently it went around and a few people got the phone calls. 7:30 p.m. that one after sunset, and then you got this faint red glow in the sky. Really, really bright, which is apparently the thing that's unusual about them. The sky just exploded and all these beams. People were just ecstatic about the quality of the auroras. Low magnetic latitude, 34 degrees north in Spain. Japan. Through the clouds in Maine, Alaska. Quite a nice one. Now, people have asked what's the, there was a question I went around in the last month's question box on what is the cause of the colour of the auroras. Well, the auroras are caused by electrons striking the atoms in the Earth's atmosphere, either oxygen or nitrogen. The atoms absorb the energy of the electron, and this raises the energy level of that atom. And normally, if that would happen in gases of high density like the Earth's surface, because the atoms are very close together, they collide with each other and the energy is sort of gets lost from that atom. If the gas is more rarefied, closer to a vacuum, obviously the atoms of the gas aren't as close to each other, so there's less collisions. And this then gives time for the atom to lose that extra energy that it picked up from being hit by this charged particle, and it loses that extra energy. In doing so, it gives out light. Now, it can only be decays or that loses this energy in it after a certain period of time, which is why the atoms sort of close together near the Earth's surface are too close together, and it doesn't have sufficient time for it to decay and give out the photon of light. When the gas is more rarefied, it will. So the colours depend on where in the atmosphere. If it's higher up, there's less density, and it's got longer before it decays. Lower down, it has to happen in a shorter time, and also depends on what atom. The energy is only given out at certain wavelengths, just like the light in a neon tube or mercury lamps, at only particular wavelengths. I think to try and find a bit more information if anyone's interested, John, just on exactly the physics of it. It's a bit much to go into here. But that's basically the reason why we get the different colours. And you'll see on this diagram it says red light at the bottom, then green light, and then red again up higher. The red and the green often combine to be an orange-yellow sort of thing. And you see that you get the green with the red up higher. Depends on how far you are away from them and exactly where you are in relation to the active part of the sky. That's pretty typical. You get that green and a little bit of red along the bottom of that green from the low down, but the major part is of the red is up high. Now one of those is from nitrogen, the other one's from oxygen with a different ionisation state. They're fairly typical, green and the veil red on top. Yeah, nice, those are nice coloured rays. They're very, very bright. Aurora, they call it, and it's directly overhead. The sky is still bright. It's been red instead of a lot of yellow there. It's a combination of the red and the green, giving an orangey sort of effect. Yeah, you see star groups you recognise in there every so often. This is only the October 22nd one, but there was another display on the following weekend and another on the weekend after that. If you're interested, get on the internet and have a look at them and see where they all are. Okay, wrap it up.
The index was back up to 10 last night, about 9 hours into.
It was already up again, I think. Yeah.
So should we be out there looking tonight then?
There was no alertness, it just came out.
No, it went extremely rapidly by about 10 seconds.
There was no major effect on the sun. I counted 311 Leonids over 2 hours and 2 minutes.
Just a little tiny bit.
All right, I'll try to do 2 months of the sky, take us through to January the 15th, with a bit of luck. Okay. Just use the screen to lock up the board there. Right, planets. Right, with respect to Mercury and Venus, there's absolutely no go for it for the 2 months. The Sun is the pinky one. There it curves around for the summer solstice around late December. But Venus clearly is tracking the Sun. Mars, I beg your pardon, Mercury is tracking it also and edging away there. But even there, it's just too close to the Sun for comfort, so they're out for 2 months. I can't see anyone arguing against that.
Morning or what time?
Well, it doesn't matter. The positioning will be the same in the eastern sky or the western sky. Either rising or setting, they're going to be in the Sun's glare. Okay? Right, Mars is still a goer for the western sky, but it's declining fast. It's clearly gibbous, okay? And there's a nice arrangement for the 20th of the 12th, which is on the sky for the month sheet. I knocked out the 20th of the 12th because it gets cluttered when you do the moon over 2 months every day. So I just did a lapse of 2 days, and only one for November there. So in that narrow frame for Mars, the moon is bouncing over only 3 times. But it's still worth looking at. And that's what I mean when you have a lot of moon shots. Full moon going right across from early-ish, late November late December, but Jupiter and Saturn are going to be at their best over Christmas. They should be superb. Saturn is already absolutely great, but no closeness with the Moon. If there's any closeness, well, guess which one's going to dominate? The Moon, slightly on the full side. Okay. Now you've got the best views on the sky for the month, so I'll skip that and go straight to the hemispherical charts. You've also got this on sky for the month, and all of those are easy objects. I've got a computer telescope now, so in the past I didn't label anything. I now have labelled them so that anyone else who has got a computer telescope with a go-to function, there are the names, the N numbers, the M numbers, the alignment stars are there because I need them too. If you're aligning a telescope with the sky, you need to key in either on a Celestron or a Meade telescope the names of the stars you want to align. And if you want to star hop, you star hop. It's up to you. But everything on that chart is absolutely dead easy. There's just no question about it. I tend to forget the western sky now. It's sort of in a bit of decline. Okay. Similarly with the southern sky, there was a moon thing on the other one. Hang on, never mind. Emphasis on the southern sky is the Milky Way rising with all those clusters. Now I've reduced the clusters down to magnitude 5.4. If I'd left it at 6 or 7, it would just be packed. Now, of interest with the sky looking south is a few wide clusters, which I will show later. But again, same thing. The N numbers are there. There's not too many messier objects there. That one there near Pubis, M47. Stacks of them are in the northern sky. But all of those are easy picking. I would leave Centaurus down there for a little while. It's too low, unless you've got a perfectly clear southerly horizon. Okay. Now, this is a magnification program. I've shown you this before. And with respect to the objects that I'll very quickly show you. Okay, the objects are marked green, okay? There's 3 for each sky. So the first one will be that galaxy there, Silver Coin Galaxy, M77, and Saturn also. I'll just show you some images of those. Okay, M77, which is absolutely dead easy. Okay, that's just a low scale chart. That's in Cetus. I didn't do it wide enough. So I missed the hook of Cetus there. I did a 16-degree thing, but it wasn't enough. So what I do is I home in 8 degrees to magnitude 8 and take it out only to magnitude 5 here, but I didn't go far enough, so I missed that bit. Anyway, there's a binocular view. Slightly exaggerated with the galaxy, but that goes up to Mira. That's Delta Ceti. There's the hook there, and there's M77. I mean, it's so easy. You just start to see the spiral nature on it. I did a CCD on that. I'm joking. Made it up. Okay, that's through large binoculars, and if you look carefully, you can see an outer thing to it. Large apertures would pick that up. And there's these spirals just starting to form. All of this is computer generated, so I'm cheating. Okay. Silver Coin Galaxy, same thing. Here, again, I haven't gone far enough. There's Alpha Sculptor. Down here it should be Beta Ceti, which is on one of the handout charts. There's your Silver Coin Galaxy. If you're not sure of the surroundings, looking through binoculars is a nice straight line of stars. But look, experienced astronomers will show you that. It is so easy. Okay, and a large view is a little bit like that, perhaps a bit more elongated. Radio. Last one is good old Saturn. I enjoyed doing this one. Okay, now there's obviously Taurus. I mean, you cannot mistake it. I mean, it's so obvious, okay? There's the Hyades of Taurus. There's Saturn with the eye. If you whack binoculars onto it, it's a little bit better, and the surroundings are a little bit better. There's Taurus blown up. It's quite a great area. And if we get really excited, we start to see a ring. And I've had to set it up so that the colour of the ring is a little bit darker, so you know I've done it right. See the tilt? And if we go to a telescope, it's a little tiny bit better. So perhaps later in the year, with computer mucking around at my end, we might see the Cassini division and the shadow of the ring on the planet. I'm being very naughty. Okay, southern sky, 3 to go. Now, this is Canis Major. That I should have relabeled that M41, the lovely cluster. That's back to Sirius. But that is a lovely white cluster there, and if we whack binoculars on it, ordinary 7x50s, you see it starting to form. And if you whack large binoculars, it really goes wide. And it's one of the few clusters that it just can't take too much magnification. There probably are some more stars there, but the database only goes to magnitude 8 at the moment. So that's Kalinda 121. And again, that goes back to Sirius down there. Okay. 2 to go. In the southern sky, similarly. Oops, wrong one. I'll do the sequence. Okay. On the southern sky, nearly done. Okay. I've done the chromium one. That one's next. It's very easy. It's just below Theta Carina. There's your Theta Carina there, and with binoculars it shows up there. That is not a meteor streak, that is a computer error. Okay? There's 3766, it's a white cluster, and one more on this is a lovely double that is just so easy. Now, there's the constellation Apis. Now, unfortunately, I forgot to rotate it on the computer. There's Apis there, and the little red double is the little star just underneath. Here you can see it reversed, so I've been a bit naughty there. I forgot to rotate it computer-wise. If you whack binoculars onto that, that's the star there. Okay, it's breaking up the thingamajig. It's a double where the primary is red and the secondary is orange with a tilt of red in it. So there they are, starting to split. There's your primary, and the secondary is, as I said, a touch of red in it. And if you are very, very observant with a telescope, you'll see a magnitude 12 star. I've flipped it over now. There's your primary. The primary has a magnitude 12 star very close by. Okay, it is there. All right, exit. And very, very, very quickly, one last chart for slightly more experienced members, and there's only one. Come on.
What does that do? Someone more experienced member?
No?
There's only one star, I want to experience
I'm playing facetious, Bob.
Not behaving yourself here. Come on. Right back. That's better. Huh? Yeah, just hang on. What should I do? That's better. Just give me a moment. You should have done that. That's the data producer's fault. Huh? I'll get it, don't worry. It's only one chart. Okay. This doesn't work, I'll give up. Beauty. Like I said, there's only one chart. Stuff visible in the 6-inch telescope, they're moderately bright. If you're a bit experienced, they're worth it. There's only one chart, and that's it. It's over there for those who want it. It's basically same scenario. All are basically N objects. They're between magnitudes 8.5 and 10.5. Some are observing possible. They're moderately bright, and perhaps, for example, with my computer telescope over this area, an 8-inch computer telescope, I saw the whole lot. I lined my telescope, no star charts whatsoever. I just took that out with the numbers, keyed it in, and it went straight to them. And I am not joking. And I've been star hopping for 20 years. No joke. So for those who want to star hop, the stars go down to magnitude 6, so you can star hop. I mean, the experienced observers would have seen these, but for example, with my 10-inch, I have never had the fast success that I've had with my 8-inch telescope recently. It's just cut down the time just dramatically. I'm done.
Thanks, Bob. Right, everyone have their raffle tickets that they wish to have. Next one is Ian. Do you have something? No. Only can take one time. And do you want the answer?
No, I'll use it. Only a short burst tonight, folks. I thought we wouldn't have so much time, so this is it. Looking at figures. Some people are good at figures, some people not quite so good. There are some we've got to have in our minds all the time in astronomy and understanding, because one of the challenges of astronomy is to comprehend the vast numbers and the vast sizes of things. But this is almost like a bit of a quiz, this one. So you should be seeing a lot of things you already know. 150 million kilometres, what is that?
Earth-Sun distance.
Earth-Sun distance, there we are, Russell, very quick. Earth-Sun distance, which of course we call, what, one? Astronomical unit, okay. That's the average distance from the Earth to the Sun. And I said that's round figures, and it's amazing how very close to that round figure it is. It isn't exactly that. The one underneath that, 300,000 kilometres a second. What is that? Speed of light, yes, the speed of light. If you want to be technical, it's the speed of light in a vacuum, but it's very little different to that in air, in the Earth's atmosphere. And that's probably the easiest number to remember, 300,000 kilometres a second is the speed of light. 1,000 seconds, which of course is 16 minutes and 40 seconds. What's that?
Light diameter of the Earth's orbit.
Here we are, quick at that, there we are, Roger's quick.
The which?
The light diameter, in other words, the time it takes light to traverse the Earth's path around the Sun. See, many people know that the Earth-Sun distance for the light to travel from the Sun to the Earth is about 8 minutes. That's fairly well known. But of course, if you take across the system, that's double that, 16 minutes. Which is 1,000 seconds. And that was particularly important when the first discovery of the speed of light by Woomera back in 1675, he made the first determination by observing the moons of Jupiter, and noticed that it took this 1,000 seconds, there was this 1,000 second delay in observing the eclipses of the moons of Jupiter, or close to that, when you graphed it out over a whole year. and that was the way he worked out that light took 1,000 seconds to travel across the Earth's orbit. And that was the first determination of the speed of light. He wasn't exactly right, but he was fairly close. Next one, 10 million kilometres. What's that?
About a light year.
That's approximately a light year, yeah. A light year is a unit of distance, not time. It's technically about 9.4 or something like that, but it's that's near enough. And if you bear it in mind and relate to anybody else. What's 40 million? Yep, the nearest star. The nearest star, technically it's supposed to be Proxima Centauri, but Alpha Centauri is part of the same system, we believe, and that's just over 4 light years away. And of course, if you multiply 4 by 10, you get 40 million. What's 30 million?
Oh, a parsec.
There we are. John pretty fast on that one. Parsec, yes. Parsec is another unit of distance. I mentioned this a month or two back. Some of you might remember. That's the distance subtended by 1 second of arc, and it's about 3.26 light years, which of course means that 30 million kilometres would be 1 parsec. Right, 100,000 light years. Yeah, it's approximate diameter of the Milky Way, but it's very approximate. That sort of distance, that size, if you want to know how far it is across the Milky Way. 30,000 light years.
Our place in from the outer spiral arm.
Yes, that's the distance. Distance of the Sun from the centre of the Milky Way.
Centre.
Right, from the centre. Distance of the Sun from the centre of the Milky Way. Now they get a bit harder now. The last couple. 6 by 10 to the 24th. Now that would mean a 6 with 24 noughts after it. Kilograms. That's a pretty substantial mass.
Mass of the Sun.
The mass of the Sun. Any advance on that?
The distance to Andromeda?
It's a 1.
No, it's kilograms, so it has to be a mass. No. Still haven't got it. Somebody said? Mass of the Earth, correct. The mass of the Earth. It's very close to 6. Very, very close to 6. So it's a nice round figure.
Sun's 10 to the 30, isn't it?
Yeah, would be, yeah, something like that, yes. Quite a bit, substantially more. And the last one, 7 by 10 to the 5th kilometres. Now that's 7 with 5 zeros. That's not a hell of a lot, is it? That's 0.7. It's 0.7 of 0.7 million. So 700,000.
Diameter of the moon's orbit?
No.
About 300,000.
No. Nobody's got it yet.
Radius of the Sun?
Correct. The radius of the Sun. There we are. Who got that? Roger. No?
Peter, actually.
Ah. Okay. There we are. That's it.
Very good.
Mr. President, a couple of announcements. Will I make a couple of announcements?
Oh, yes, I think we'll
Yes. Three announcements. If anybody's interested in attending Melbourne Observatory, Friday the 14th of December, there's a members' night, ASD members' night. I'm willing to take people around, anybody who wants to go, and look through the big telescope should the sky be clear. Remember, it doesn't get dark or fairly late, but the time can be spent looking around and having a look around the place. So if you are interested, I'm not talking about large numbers, just small numbers, and there will be another opportunity, obviously, next year. But if anybody's interested, you can see me later tonight. I don't know, I'll give you my phone number and whatever and turn up. Second thing is there's videos over there on sale, usual price. One of that video that's coming up soon about the Huddle is there. Also, somebody mentioned about Aurora. There's a couple of videos on Aurora explained.
I can watch that, it is brilliant.
It is good. There you are. I gave Roger a free copy, so that's advertising. Right. One last announcement. For that, any of you don't win the bottle of port, I've got some more to sell. Charity day, it's all right.
That's all.
Just one question from the Historical Society of Mornington. They want to know the site of the first observatory on the peninsula, which was set up by Professor Parkinson Wilson, the first professor of maths at Melbourne University. He actually had a home in Mornington and died whilst marking exam papers and is buried in the Mornington Cemetery. And someone's writing detailed history, but they don't know the exact location of where that observatory was. So if anyone finds out, could you let me know?
Okay, well, maybe we draw the raffle.
Had the raffle for the last time of the year in my special raffle box. Amazing what I've got to improvise with. Alright, the first prize, and if anyone wins it up to the back, they come down and collect it. I'll get Roger to put his ticket away and take one out of here. So this is for the first prize for the encyclopedia. Good luck. And it's not me. It's number 26. Well done. Enjoy. Is that any good? No second prize? I'll take it. I'll take it. Right, for the second prize. And you can draw it before as it was yours. Thank you. All donations that we get through the year, thank you.
I draw, I put it back in.
If you draw it, put it back in, give it back.
71.
71. On the back. Well done. Thank you. Enjoy that over Christmas.
You're going to drink it after.
Just thank you to all those people that support the raffle. It's been a successful year with the raffle again. Everyone comes up to me and thanks and really enjoys the prizes. If you have any suggestions for prizes, as long as they're within a reasonable sort of money, around the $50 mark, let me know. I'll see what I can do. Donations we accept. We will draw up 3 prizes every month. So thank you again, and we'll see you next year with some more raffle.
Just bear in mind the Astronomy 2002s are here. If you've ordered one, we'll hang on to it for you, and certainly into January if you don't have any money with you. If you haven't ordered one, we have plenty spare if you want to buy it tonight. For members it's $18 and for non-members it's $20, so there's a good incentive to become a member. Come and see me afterwards. If you did put your name down to order one, can you please let me know before you pick it up so I can cross you off the list as saying that we've given it to you. Because someone has already picked up theirs here, and if they could come forward during the break and just let me know so I can sort of scrub them off the list, because some people have already paid and we're going to pick them up afterwards. Okay, well with that, we're not in the usual room tonight, so they're turning into a VCE exam room, I think. So Peter and Carl have actually set things up just outside the door with an urn there. So we'll have the tea break just outside and reconvene here in about 20 minutes at 9:40. Okay, thank you.
We're just about to keep borrowing and I think
It was really warm. I think I'm listening to the opera, yeah. Definitely. God. It's different. Do you think I'm worthy of that? I'm worthy.
Normally they give it to the treasurer.
When there are some
Just told me not to leave. What? She told me not to leave.
I mean, I can say
Actually, I put the lid there. What do you
I was going to say, I was in me in most meetings, so I was sick of it all. Showed up, last month he did. So he took that 10 and truth. It's just tough kind of stuff like
okay then.
Who's got it? You think it's
I mean, even for the easier instead of going for I mean, I'm talking about there's something over there. It went to refractor.
And then Monday
I've got that one tonight.
I would say it's.
No, I've got it a few months
You may go to just go to one home for the time.
I put them on. I go through. As soon as it's mechanical on the ground, I choose that as the first thing to go on. I can that yellow powder. I've never not had to use that.
Yep, I've got your line tag for you.
So that was my meeting. They just went in 2001. So I've got this phobia now. I've been getting up to observe early in the morning. Every time I've done it, I've done something times. I put the show straight out to it. I sit in the lower box. Get up there and play out of it. Every time.
Now I've got labels can be used for the computer. For example, there was a galaxy in Cetus that I've been trying to get over the last 3 years. I wouldn't say it was elusive, I'd say it last time. But I did check that out. I keep it, it was 157 in Cetus, I keep it in the computer, it went straight to And I mean, you know, when I've started, and I said, okay, obviously I've done it wrong before.
It was raining on me and I was
I even picked up comic in grade 2, I think in August or September. I mean, I've even picked up.
Otherwise I would have been up in the springs.
You know the Galaxy 129
That was good.
antennas? I picked it up a week ago with the full moon. You know, you can't see the bloody star, big stars. It just goes to it.
Yeah. Second night, got up.
Oh, the only thing I've really
One week, sort of cut to the break.
finally got a couple of
Did you want one of those?
That's why I like it.
They're more it's guaranteed to be something you can.
That's right.
You have a look and see.
Definitely bushwalking. You really love walking in the
Yeah, that's right. Only the thing is,
Aren't they all the same?
bushwalking, whenever it rains, I keep my raincoat on.
Just managing. Yes, I think I have a guy, I assume that Pegasus was going to rise sufficiently high in the sky for the Andromeda area to just match up a tiny bit. While Pegasus rose and started to twist, just before it twisted too much down, I would just get it.
So I'm doing the third row game this weekend. But before that, I was Strathboat. A lot of the snacks are actually cleared farmland. And about a third of the forest.
That's in Virginia. Yes.
Just like this, you live in a machete. And you kind of walk on campus bear and do that stuff. It's easy. And then I'm doing the week after that, 7, 8, 9 December, I was doing this walk around the mountain collection course, certificate. He's doing his assessment. They actually assess around and you have to lead a walk. So he's looking at victims. I'm going to do that. Help GPS unit.
Yeah, it's a bit like
Yeah, I that would be that would be the same. But there was a, I don't know dates mixed up. I think there was a Thompson. No, there was a Friday night first. There was a touch and go. There was Thomas. That was the next night.
John. Yeah, I'll start out with someone kicks it off about too. Pisces.
No, I haven't really been wearing
Capricorns around there. Just picking out the outlines of the constellations and stuff like that. It's good just picking out the outline of the constellation and looking at what's surrounding it.
I mean, it tells you sometimes the object is below the horizon, but it's the one you like and see, you idiot.
Yeah, that's really quite really high the nucleus. Like the Silver Galaxy. Some of the time, quite often, these has no, that's actually variable. Right, it's just the word sounds the same. It sounds similar. But so that's a good option. Alex Nebula in Aquarius. It's coming up really well. Jumps at the top of the message. So the super sky like colours then, yeah. Oh, it does. Well, I will be, yeah. And the helix, because the helix is so big, the Christmas present, Christmas club lights, low super skies, low magnification, and even small ones. It's really good. Because of the high pollution, like one of the nebula filters.
And you don't have any.
It's just basically rejects.
Do you have to tell it
Just passes the HL bands, which is from the nebula emission lines. And that really just brings it out. Really just dramatically pushes a couple of bars, but it's quite good through that.
You know, like, it's not too close to you.
Well, not from Melbourne. In the bush.
All
Alright,
Had the main didn't quite generalise or anything. Software. Sorry, I accept it well.
it's too big, and it's once again, because we're in that light spread over that area. It's spread out.
And then you get it.
When you look at it, I've never actually looked at it because every time I've look at it, it's been in the backyard. I can't actually see it from the backyard. When we're in Somerville, I can see it from the backyard, but it's a telescope. It doesn't mean it's too large for a telescope. No, but I play on the fence, so I'd have to get up with the binoculars. I saw it, the first time I saw it was out from
Coffee stains on that. 5128, the Centaurus A galaxy.
Did you have new observations?
Beg your pardon?
Did you do new
Oh, these are the
observations?
sketches I've done over the past few years. Galaxy 55, which is near GC5 rated by Heale was talking about earlier. B33, which is one of my viewing highlights. The Parsec Nebula in Orion. This is a difficult one to see. You need a special HB to filter to see it. And also a very larger scope in a dark sky.
I got some new one. Did you want to have a
Quite a good view of Jupiter there.
Yeah, it's just like a sheet of cellophane. That's what it looks like. It just looks like it's 99.9%. So you can also buy the glass filters. So they come and sell the disco. And it's the same sort of stuff, but eventually on glass. They're like
Actually, there's another comment worth watching soon. Will be coming to WM1. Give about another month or so, that'll be visible. These telescopes and probably even binoculars. Oh, probably even as a already. That's where this from America. As I said, that's by the end of next month, it'll be worth watching.
So I'm interested now because I've done a couple of programs. I'm interested to take numbers to see and he was telling me why it's hard. Because if you're like the last day, you've got to navigate down and find the right spoon. Well, I guess it doesn't matter. So it doesn't matter anyway. You end up with the wrong spoon because they
Oh yes, there's no meeting next month as a break.
You're going to come in December for this meeting, this night, Southern Observatory? Do you want to come and take you?
I've been on down for some of these viewing nights.
At 8 o'clock. Right, don't have to be there exactly at 8 o'clock. You just come when you've got it. The viewing won't start till after 9 o'clock because it won't be dark till after 9 o'clock. But I can take you around the place before it gets dark. There's a lot to see, not just look at the sky, all the history of the place. Yeah? What's your name?
Narry Warren Community Centre, Christmas party.
What's your phone number?
Your name, Sullivan, mate.
I just noticed that the other side.
What's this Yugoslav? Hungarian, right? Okay, you got my phone number, do you want to write it down? Yeah, okay. Oh, that's
John Goodall will be speaking library room, we'll be running a video on the Christmas star if you wish to actually see a video instead of listening to astrophotography.
I'll see what
And feel free to move quietly between one session and the other if you wish to give it a change or stretch your legs during it. Now, John has been a secondary teacher for 35 years and is now retired and lives down Dramana. And he was telling me he's been he was a foundation member of the Ballarat Astronomical Society, which would have to be, dare I say, one of the older astronomical societies in Victoria. And indeed, yeah. And he was an ASF member about 20 years ago or so. And we'll have to get him back into the fold since then, as he's been an ASV member since 1961. I don't know if you doubt that. Is that about right? He's also quite well known for putting together an astrophotography course that was advertised in TAFE a couple of years ago, I seem to recall, on 2 separate years. And I'm not sure if any of those ever went ahead. You might want to mention numbers are a problem, yeah. Okay, well, without further ado, particularly since we've had requests from members now for about 2 to 3 years to get someone in to talk about astrophotography, to know who knows quite a bit about it, I'll ask John to come up and tell you all about astrophotography.
Thanks for that introduction. Astronomical photography is something I've been at for something like 40 years, I think, when it all adds up. Time flies when you're having fun. But I started off as a young member at the Ballarat Astronomical Society, and that would have been about 1956, somewhere in that time. I remember the first night I visited the observatory there was the first night I wore long pants. And since then I've never looked back. And that particular night, the curator said, "Look, would you like to have a quick look through the telescope?" This was just a sort of night where a few people came in. And my father took me round to the telescope and I saw Saturn for the first time. That was it. I was hooked. And since then, I've sort of dabbled in astronomical photography at various times, and been members, as I say, member of various societies. I was fortunate to meet in the late 1960s a gentleman by the name of Rudy Stabenow. I don't know if anyone know Rudy Stabenow, but he was a member of the Geelong group at one stage, and he was also, I believe, a lecturer at University or something in Germany, I'm not sure. However, he was in charge of an observatory in Germany for quite a long time, but he was an exceptional photographer, and I learned a lot of my bits and pieces from him back in the 1960s. Okay, else. Hopefully I'll get the right button. Do that for starters. Glasses on. So I can't point to things. Right, astronomical photography is just simply photography of astronomical objects, be they in Earth orbit or further out. There are basically 5 types of astronomical photography that I've listed there. Untracked camera, that's just simply a camera on a tripod. A tracked camera, one that's actually following the stars. Focal plane photography, where you place the camera at the focal plane without an eyepiece in the telescope. Eyepiece projection, where you place an eyepiece there and then the camera behind that. And finally, using some sort of video camera or CCD imaging. Firstly, the untracked camera. The untracked camera, as I say, needs to be put on a reasonably solid tripod. If you set the camera on full aperture, hold the camera steady on a stand or a tripod. With the lens cap on, lock the shutter open. And gently remove the lens cap and leave it off for at least 10 minutes. And then replace the lens cap and close the shutter. Now the reason for that, of course, is that if you're fiddling around with the camera trying to close the shutter, the camera's moving around like mad, so you virtually use the lens cap as your shutter. You have to have a camera where you can lock the shutter closed. sorry, not the shutter open, it's the other way around. Now, some of the cheaper cameras will do that. You can sort of make a little neat clip that goes across the top, which will hold the shutter closed for you. Sorry, the button down, shutter open. This is a photograph of the Giller 5-inch telescope dome in Ballarat. This was taken about 1957. All the photographs here, incidentally, I've taken at some stage. So you can see the Southern Cross towards the top. This is an untracked camera, so these stars have moved. Another example of an untracked photograph. I'm not sure of the area of the sky there. This is a more recent colour photograph. I sort of suspect there may have been an Aurora around at the time, but maybe that was wishful thinking. But you'll recognise some of the stars there as the Southern Cross and the pointers. It's quite a good way to get started with astronomical photography because you can take star trails and then simply mark the ends of the trails. And you've got yourself a star map record. There's a Leonid in 1999. That was taken on the road between Avoca and Maryborough at about 3 o'clock in the morning. This is more recent Leonid. This was taken on Monday morning. The sky was a bit bright. This one was towards the end of the shower, so the sky was getting a bit bright.
Actually, 2 on that.
There's actually quite a few on most of them. This one, I think, has only got the one. This one was a tracked photograph, though. I've cheated a bit there. I put one of the tracked photographs in there, which wasn't too bad. This one, of course, was one of the better ones. This one left a trail, and you can see the glow towards the right-hand side, which in fact is the trail that was left behind. Because my camera is still running, still open, the trail sort of left a glow afterwards. There's a meteor above that, just above and to the right. And I think there's another one further down to the right. A little bit tricky to see that one. During the last sunspot maximum, back about 1987, you had quite good auroras, particularly down in the Western District. At that stage I was teaching at Woomera and lived at Woolsthorpe, which is about 25 kilometres north, which had the advantage of having a very dark sky and a school oval, which meant that it was a good place to set the camera. Again, untracked, so the stars are made lines. One of the interesting objects, which is not really an astronomical object, but still very useful for practicing your skills in photography, is the iridium flares. Now, the iridium satellites, of which there are about 80 in operation, another 40 which have failed, and they're not quite sure what they're going to do with them. These iridium satellites are used for satellite telephones, and they very nearly decided to crash the lot of them into the ocean last year. Fortunately, somebody brought them up. But anyway, the antennas have to be pointed in a particular direction in order to send the signal back to the base station, and these offer a very good reflective surface. Not only that, it's a predicted direction, so therefore they can predict when the sun is going to actually shine on this flat surface. Now some of these go to magnitude -8 and -9, which means you can just about cast a shadow with them. They only last about 5 to 10 seconds, but they're quite a display when they actually go past. You get on average at least one a night, not necessarily at -8 or -9, but still they go on. That one's so bright, in fact, we have a secondary image in the lens assembly of the camera, and that's what the little one is up a little bit further. If you're very lucky, you can actually get 2 of them within a minute of each other, or 5 minutes of each other. This was in the early morning. This was photographed from Arthur's Seat, and these 2 iridium flares were about 3 or 4 minutes apart. And that's why some tracking has occurred during the time in between. Then we have the track camera. Now, the purpose of the track camera is that no longer do we have star trails, but fixed stars. And you have to have some sort of clock which is able to drive the camera around and follow the stars. As you know, the Earth rotates from west to east, and therefore the stars appear to go from east to west, and therefore the camera has to be tracked around an axis which is parallel to the Earth's axis, so that it will follow the stars. It has to be a 24-hour clock. Now this particular clock is a 24-hour time switch clock. Anyone can remember back to the SCC, know that they use these for hot water systems. And this was a wind-up one. You can see the actual thing in front there, and you wind it up, and it's an 8-day clock, so it keeps on going for 8 days. You can probably hear it ticking away there, simply because I used it on Monday night. So you have to point it to the celestial pole. Now that's done by straight judgment. What I normally do is I set it up for one shot, and I set it up for another shot, and then I move it a bit, put it back down again, set it up again. And by setting it up each time, I figure that at least 50% of the time I'm going to be reasonably accurate. That's the technique for locating the celestial pole, which is obviously at our latitude above the southern horizon. The settings for the camera in this case are camera on full aperture, shutter held open, and if you do exposures more than about 10 minutes, then the inaccuracies in you setting it up start to crop up and give you tracking error. Quite a few of my shots do obviously have tracking error. This is a photograph of Scorpio taken back in the 60s. You can see Antares just to the left of the S in Scorpio there. If you enlarge a small portion of that photographically, in other words, you just simply enlarge the negative, you can see the sort of detail that's available on the negative. So you can take some pretty useful shots. Another shot of, that's the same Scorpio again, however, another shot was taken quite a few years later. Antares is on the right-hand side with the halo around it, and if you look carefully to the left of it, you can see M4 quite obviously. You would know that M4 in fact is not visible with the naked eye, just visible through a pair of binoculars, but with a 50mm lens and a 400 ASA film, with about a 10-minute exposure, it comes up pretty obviously. Southern Cross, you can see the top left there, next to Beta Crucis, the Jewel Box cluster. Orion, because our eyesight is such that we can only see colours if they are reasonably bright, then when we look at the Orion Nebula, it appears to be green through a telescope. If you start using photographic film, that's able to see the colours, and hence the Orion Nebula starts to come up as red, which is the red object that's there. Another Iridium flare, this one is actually part of a larger photograph, which was in the Sky and Space magazine, put it in there. Can anyone suggest what the other line is?
Aircraft.
It's an aircraft. You'll notice these lights are out of phase. They're falling in and out of phase, so that the red and white ones are not flashing at the same rate. Aircraft are quite common on the Mornington Peninsula, particularly in Dramana. They said it seemed to feature in a lot of my photographs one way or another. The International Space Station. This was part of a plan to photograph the space station and the shuttle on the same shot. Unfortunately, in each case it was near sunset, and it was very difficult to get both of them on there. However, what's happened there is that the camera has been placed on the back of a Rodeo flat-back utility, and the result is that as I've handled the camera, you've got a little squiggle on the end in both cases, simply because I've moved the camera slightly. Another picture of the ISS, International Space Station. This was a photograph taken Monday morning. One of the set of about 30 I took of Leonids, and there wasn't a Leonid in it. And it features well because it's quite a well tracked one, but no Leonids. I haven't been able to see one anyway.
What sort of film is it?
That's just ordinary Max 400 ASA.
Where was this taken?
That was taken 10 kilometres south of Avoca, on the Ballarat to Avoca Road.
And you didn't see any flares? You didn't see any...
No, that was just bad luck. I didn't get any on that particular shot. The previous shots I had there were in fact taken during the same time. Nearly all the frames I took had at least one meteor in it. This is one of the rare ones. These are photographs taken during the lunar eclipse last year in July. I I've popped these in here because they're quite well tracked. The tracking device was working particularly well that night. And of course there's the eclipse moon at the top. This was taken back in 1987. It's a large magnetic cloud, and the object is the supernova 1987. Quite obviously very bright. I haven't been able to find a shot or get a shot that hasn't got that in yet, so I can't show you one of the large magnetic cloud. There's a colour shot of the same thing. What was interesting is that when I heard about it, it was about 2 days after it had been discovered, I walked out, looked up at the large magnetic cloud and said, right, there it is. It was that obvious. This is a reasonably historic photograph, and as far as it's got Comet Austin just on the right-hand side there. Not a particularly bright comet, but the little cross that's there is the nova that we saw about a month ago, a couple of months ago. This is a star map that John Goodall supplied to me to try and locate that particular nova. You can see the little circle towards the bottom of where it should be. I've been playing with the computer a bit on some of these images and was able to, in fact, find it on my images. That's an enlarged version of it. Now, if we go to a photograph, this photograph was taken about, I suspect, about 20 years ago. The circle is where the nova should be. And of course, it isn't on that one. But notice where 56 is, the star 56. And there, in fact, is 56. The little arrow shows you where that nova is. Now, that one's got a tracking error. You can see the stars all like little crescents. But it's reasonably obvious that it's there. If we enlarge it up a bit, there's the star there. It isn't on the previous photograph, but it's on that one. Yes, actually, the latest scan I bought goes up to 2400. When I put it on Photoshop, I can actually zoom in 6 or 7 times. And that's when I start seeing the grain of film on the print, and you can start looking for objects like that. It's only over the last week that I've started playing with that. Comet Bennett back in 1970. Comet Heale taken from Woolsthorpe in the Western District. That was a very early photograph. You can see the early as far as Heale is concerned. You can see the sun's on the way up, so it's a very difficult photograph to get. I had observed Heale on its way in back to August in 85, picked it as it went past Aldebaran. That was the first time I saw it in the early morning. And there's Heale about a fortnight later. Not many people saw the tail of Halley's Comet because most people decide to watch it in the evening rather than the early morning. I can't pronounce the name of that comet, somebody else can help me. That's the one. That was taken near the quarry in Woomera. Quite a good spot because there's not many lights up there. And that's the other recent one, which is Heale. Yeah, with the horizon and the moon up in the top right-hand corner. I've got a couple of dozen photographs of that one over a series of nights. And that one's linear A2. It's been enhanced. It's been played around with quite considerably, but you can see a bit of a tail at least. What impresses me about it is you get this bluish image of linear A2. It seems to be slightly blue compared to some of the other comets. I don't know whether that's a result of the film or what. Right, a little lesson on optics. Eyes, cameras and image formation.
Just before you go on, that was all on track cameras, wasn't it?
That was.
Yes. What's the software you used to do the enhancement? You mentioned Photoshop.
The enhancement was actually done by the fellow in Dramana for me. He did it on an Apple Mac. It was a straight photograph, and then he played around with it on his Mac, and he's very good at doing that. Sort of thing.
You yourself use some sort of Photoshop?
I only use Photoshop for making these sorts of things up. I've started using Photoshop to look at prints because I can enhance them, but I can also have a close look at them without having to look at the emulsion under a microscope or symbol. It makes it a lot easier to set up and enable me to star jump a bit easier.
Do you scan prints?
Yeah, most of what you see here is scanned.
Scanned prints, not slides?
Not slides.
No.
Actually, one of the films that I took with me up to Avoca, who photographed the Leonids, turned out to be a slide film. much to my discontent. I've just grabbed one out of my box of film, and it won't be back till Friday. But my scanner will take slides as well, so I haven't got to.
But what sort of resolution do you have to do?
The resolution I'm using on these at the moment is only about 600. If you put it on, I have been known to do some 2400. I've only had the scan in a couple of weeks, this particular one, and I've done a couple on 2400, but they work out at 350 megs. They don't even fit on my zip drive. However, you can, as I say, you can zoom in about 6 or 7 times, which means you can really get in tight, and then you can take a little bit of it and then download that, which isn't too bad. Right, optics. A point light source sends light off in all directions. These can be considered to be diverging rays. If you put a piece of paper near it, you don't put an image on the piece of paper because the rays are diverging. From a distant star, it's so far away that the diverging rays become parallel rays. These are known as this is known as collimated light. When you shine this on a piece of paper, no image. If, however, you put a lens in the way, then the collimated light can be made to converge on a point, and you get an image of the star at a distance from the lens known as the focal length. And the point at which the star forms, of course, is known as the principal focus. The image size depends only on the focal length of the lens. It doesn't matter how big the lens is, how small the lens is, whether the lens is on Mars, or on Jupiter, or on Earth, then the focal length is going to tell you the size of the image that you're going to get, purely on the focal length. The image brightness, however, depends on what we call the focal ratio. This is the ratio between the focal length and the diameter of the lens or mirror. This is known as the f-stop, and some of you may know about f-stops on cameras. These are precisely the same thing. If we take a focal length of 1200 millimetres and a diameter of 150 millimetres, then 1200 divided by 150 millimetres gives you f8. And the diameter of the moon's image from an f8 type telescope or f8 telescope of these particular dimensions is about a centimetre. So that means if you get a centimetre image of the moon, then that will neatly fit onto a 35mm piece of film, which is quite useful. Now, diverging rays that come from a point light source are not collimated. And if you look at them, the object's too close and the eye cannot focus on it. In fact, the eye can only focus on light that is nearly collimated. In other words, the lens in the eye does not change shape enough to enable you to see light coming from objects other than objects that give off nearly collimated light. This is why we can't get any closer than about 8 centimetres, or in my case, half a metre. You young people have got this to look forward to. So a distant star sends out collimated light, therefore the eye can focus on it in its relaxed condition and can see the star clearly. Similarly, if you look through a telescope, the light needs to be collimated in order for you to form an image at the back of your eye in the retina. So you'll only get a clear image if the light was collimated. So if you defocus the eyepiece, other than having collimated rays, it's not going to do you any good. In the case of a camera, however, you need to form an image. So they need to converge on a point on the film. So you need a convergent cone of light to give you a clear image on the film. In order to do this, the eyepiece has to be moved outwards a little bit. I can actually do that in reverse, but I think you probably get the general idea. Focal plane photography. Well, you get a SLR camera, single lens reflex camera, of which there are 2 sitting in the front there. This one is a Pentax Spotmatic F, which I've got about 4 of, which are particularly good for this. And you remove the lens, so you end up with a camera without a lens. This means that all it is a film hole with a shutter. You place this on the end of the telescope. In some way you've got to mount it on the telescope so it's going to be held reasonably steady. You can actually hold the camera in place and get your eye behind it. There's a couple of photographs later down the line that are done that way. This is referred to as focal plane photography because the film is placed at the focal plane of the objective lens. For focusing, the object is viewed through the camera viewfinder, but a guide scope will be needed for long exposures. This is because on an SLR there's a little mirror which flips up out of the way so you can take your shot. Therefore, while you're looking through the back of the camera taking the shot, you can't see anything through the camera. So it's no good trying to do long exposures without a guide scope. This is a historic photograph. This was taken 30 years ago. This is a friend of mine who was another amateur astronomer in Ballarat. This is the Giller 5-inch telescope in Ballarat. And he posed with this photograph. You can see the guide scope and the camera. The old clock mechanism there, which was a brilliant mechanism. It worked extremely well and people put it wrong. The telescope itself was all made of brass, which means if you handle it, you've got fingerprints all over it, and you have to polish it at least once a week. But nevertheless, it looked beautiful. And these are the sorts of photographs of the moon which you'll come up with without any real difficulty. This is a photograph taken through one of my telescopes, and this was taken by holding the camera behind the telescope, because for some reason I didn't have a mount made at this stage, and I wanted to photograph Jupiter and the moon, and that was actually held in place. I think it was about 30 to the second exposure, so I didn't need to have a guide scope. This is obviously an eclipse of the moon, a series of photographs put together. This is the recent one. I'm just trying to place when this was. I think it might have been July this year. This was taken from Arthur's Seat at about 5:30 in the morning, and I think in Western Australia it was nearly total. But the next photograph I rather like. The line across the bottom is in fact Mud Island, and that's the moon setting towards Queenscliff, looking from Arthur's Seat. I really kicked myself that day. Halfway up Arthur's Seat I realised that the Tasmanian ferry was coming in, and if I had stayed down the bottom and gone down to the beach to take this photograph, I would have got the ferry in the foreground. But nevertheless, there's the breaks. Right, eyepiece projection. In this case, we put an eyepiece in. We have to move the eyepiece outwards a little so that the rays now become convergent and therefore can form an image. By the way, you can't use a camera which has a lens already on it to do this sort of photography, simply because the optics are all wrong. It is possible to hold a standard camera with a lens to a telescope as long as you focus the camera on infinity and you have the eyepiece focused for your eye, so in other words you've got collimated light coming out of the telescope. You will get a photograph that's got something on it, but it's not very satisfactory. Focus through the back of the camera. So if you look through the back of the camera to do all your focusing, and after that if you're going to do a long exposure, again you have to use your guide scope. These are very old photographs of Jupiter I took. I haven't got myself into planetary photography recently, so they're not particularly good. You can see the red spot there a little bit, by good imagination. And of course Saturn as well. Again, I haven't got myself into this for a long, long time. These are very old ones. And Venus. A guide scope is needed for long exposures, just a reminder. This is a photograph taken through the 5-inch refractor at Ballarat. And this is M7, I think. Right. This has to be guided, and it had to be guided by hand as well. I remember this particular night because ice frost was forming in my gloves, even within the dome of the telescope this night. And we had to take an esky with us because we were actually developing the film straight away. And we had the esky kept warm so that our developers didn't get too cold. And so it's rather memorable night. You'll see the double image there due to the tracking being a little bit out. This one's one of the jewel box cluster taken on the same night. Again, a bit of tracking here. this really is the forefront of my long exposure deep space photography. It's something I haven't got back to for about 30 years. So one of those days. Eyepiece projection gives you some very nice close-ups of the moon. And when you start photographing Jupiter near the moon, you start getting much better images of that. This was about 4 years ago, 3 years ago. Jupiter in the early evening, about 6 o'clock in the evening. Another one of Jupiter near the moon. Okay, full moon during an eclipse. And one of the problems with photographing an eclipse, of course, is that you need exposures of 4 or 5 seconds in order to get a reasonable coloured image. And of course, the moon moves, so you need to track them. In this case, I haven't got a tracking mechanism for anything larger than just a camera. And of the film, I took 20 shots, and of those, only 2 really worked. The others had very bad tracking area, they were just blurs. This is one of the best ones. Right, solar photography. This is one of the easiest photographs to take. This is just looking at the eclipse shining through the leaves and branches of a tree, because something you may not have realised is that all those little blotches of light that shine on the wall are in fact the leaves acting like a pinhole camera. So each of those images you see on the wall are in fact images of the sun, and if it happens to be eclipsed, they all become little crescents. Back in the 1970s at Woomera Technical School, we used to look at the sun by projection, and these are the projected images in the eclipse. My telescope's in the background, the 2 others are actually doing the projection. What was rather interesting in here was that I took the chance to have a quick look at the crescent while it was partly eclipsed. I knew of the dangers of this. When I say a quick look, I mean only half a second. And what really impressed me was that there was no pain. It was absolutely comfortable to do that. And yet if I had looked at it for any longer time than that, I would start doing some damage to my eye, because the intensity is still the same, the brightness has dropped, so the eye doesn't react properly. Right, solar photography. You need what is called a Herschel's wedge, or rather, I use a Herschel's wedge, and a filter of some sort. The purpose of firstly we've got the actual Herschel's wedge there, mounted on the 5-inch telescope array actually, and the camera over the side. The Herschel's wedge is a wedge of glass. Its purpose is that it has no silver coating on it, so most of the light goes straight through the wedge of glass, in this case about 99%. And it's made as a wedge so that when you get a reflection off the back of a piece of glass, instead of it going up into the camera, it's reflected out of the way. This is the reason for using a wedge rather than 2 parallel faces. If any of you have ever tried to buy a Herschel's wedge, I wish you luck. I don't seem to be able to purchase one at the moment. I've got one of my own, but they are virtually unattainable. I'm going to have a go at making a couple, I think. That's the only way out of it. They're not considered to be a particularly good way of doing it, apparently.
But they are safe, because if it drops off,
exactly,
you'll see nothing.
That's true enough too. So if anything fails, you're going to lose it anyway. The other thing is I use a welding filter, an arc welding filter, which again stops about 90% of the heat and light anyway, and what's important, the ultraviolet and infrared. So therefore, by the time you've got the welding filter in and the Herschel's wedge, you're pretty well off.
If you've only got the welding filter and it drops off, you get an eyeful of sun.
Absolutely, and that is very, very dangerous indeed. On top of that, one of the problems with astronomy generally is that you are trying to get a large aperture so that you can get good resolution. And one of the ways of looking at the sun is to cut the diameter of the objective down a bit by putting a stop on it. So you get a 6-inch telescope, you get a bit of cardboard with a 1-inch hole in it, put it on the front, and what have you done? You've cut the light down right, but you've also reduced the resolution. So therefore you want to keep the aperture up while still not burning your eyes out or burning your film. So this is probably one of the better ways. You can use mylar films, but my experience with mylar films is there is a degradation of the image. It's not as good. This actually you can look through and you can see the very, very fine grains on the sun. It's a very safe way of doing it, I think. These are photographs taken with that sort of a system. Nowadays I don't bother to photograph the sun because there's such good images available on the web that it's easy to keep tagging. Then if something particular comes up, I'll then go and get the telescope out and have a look. One of the problems with using a welding filter, of course, you get a green image on colour film because the filters are green. This is an eclipse taken in Ballarat. This one actually featured on the Channel 2 News back in, about 1973. I was photographing in Ballarat, and Ballarat, believe it or not, was the only place on the whole eastern coast that was clear. As we drove into Ballarat in the early hours, it had been snowing. Really strange effect. Now this is coming up over the horizon, partially eclipsed. It didn't get very much bigger than that. That's one a little bit later, the same eclipse. If you have a friendly film processor, that friendly film processor will do one of two things. If you've got colour film, they'll change the colour for you. And similarly, if you've got black and white film, they'll put some colour on it for you. And this is actually originally a green image. Who's done a good job of that, this one is another eclipse. Again, this one has had the colour doctored. And you can see a series there. Here's another eclipse. This is a more recent one. Again, the image has been doctored for colour. And I think you'll agree. Actually, I think that projector is not showing as good an image as I've got here. This one's a red-yellow that I've got here, the original. The projector's out there. However, this one has a much better series. And one of the things I found out about my computer and setting this up was that you can do these beautiful bits of animation. Okay, another thing that you can do photographing the sun is to photograph transits of the two inner planets. Unfortunately, Venus doesn't do this very often, about every 200 years, and it does it over something like an 8-year period twice. Mercury, however, does it about 11 or 12 times a century. So therefore, during my time of being interested in astronomy, it's only about 4 or 5 times, something like that. This is one, as you can see, back in about 1973 at 6:55. I thought it may have where I'd actually taken it. I suspect this was taken off a photograph I took off Arthur's Seat. I tend to write on all my photographs there because I'm more interested in scientific painting. Here's another one, not the same transit, a different one. The beauty of watching a transit of Mercury, you can do this by projecting the image with a telescope, is that you get this feeling of the size of the sun. Look at the size of that image of Mercury compared with the size of the sun. It just gives you that feeling of how massive the sun really is.
What year was that?
That's a goodie. I'll have to look up my records for that.
It was a long time back.
No, this one is about 1993. Yeah, 93. The most recent one is this one, and that was the maximum.
Yeah, that was
a little chip out the side. That's the best it got. What was interesting there was that it was supposed to clear. It was supposed to not clear the edge. In other words, to actually leave a gap towards the edge, and in fact it did. This led me to believe that it might have been something to do with the sunspot maximum and the sun actually expanding a bit. I put this to a few people, including Mr. McNally up in Sydney and a few other people. That's the case. I haven't heard the end of that story yet. I'm not quite sure why it seemed to go further onto the sun than it was predicted to.
So you had a second and a third contact?
Yeah, which was a surprise. In Australia, it wasn't supposed to happen. It was supposed to happen across the Pacific, but not in Australia. And for some reason it did, and as I say, no one was able to give me a satisfactory explanation for that one. Sometimes I'm encouraged to do some artistic photographs. This was taken outside, the actual telescope was set up outside the Woomera pub, which is about 2 kilometres from the end of the jetty. I set it up the night the day before, so I knew where the sun was going to be and so on. And I got one of my students actually to go out and sit at the end of the pier especially. Actually, 12 months later, this poor fellow was killed in a car accident on the Boundary Road, riding his bike and got knocked over by a car. Rather sad. I took a series on this particular day, and you can see it's quite impressive. That's a range of about 2 kilometres.
What was this? A camera on the back of it?
That was a camera on a 6-inch reflector,
Yeah.
taken at the focal plane, and the interesting part is the shape of the sun, of course. It's a beautiful oval shape. It's getting very close to the horizon.
And no fluid.
Oh yes, they had a Herschel's wedge and a green filter in it as well. So it's a normal photograph of the sun. It's just that we've got the silhouette in the foreground. Finally, over the last 3 or 4 years, I've been experimenting using video cameras of various sorts. My main reason that I haven't got very far with it is I haven't got round to it. I haven't had the time, as most of us find. However, I have had some really good successes along the way, and I hope within the next 3 or 4 months that I can really get some good shots, particularly of Jupiter and Saturn, taken using a video camera instead. This is a typical CMOS colour video camera. This one cost me about $150. That's a 10-cent piece next to it. And what you actually do when you get the camera is you remove the lens, and indeed you can actually remove the lens housing as well. It's two or three little screws that are in place. This means that the CCD is left wide open, which can then be placed either in eyepiece projection mode or at the focal plane. My experience is because the CCD is so small that you're better off at the focal plane. Eyepiece projection becomes quite difficult. I was playing around with this last night. I was using a webcam, one of those golf ball ones, just to find out what sort of picture I could get. I was not impressed. That was the result of the moon. That was taken about 9 o'clock last night. And you can see that's pretty shoddy. That was taken at the focal plane. I have the suspicion that the webcams have got a clear plastic coat over the top of the CCD, the charge coupled device, and I don't think it's particularly good optically. So I'm very tempted, although the camera cost me $100, I'm very tempted to get to it with a knife or something to see if I can get rid of that clear piece off the top. Actually, I'll probably never do it because I found that this is actually a digital camera, that the analogue cameras give far better results. I've recently bought a rather good one, which I hope to get some images from in the near future. This was a picture of Saturn last night. You need almost as much imagination as the earlier ones we saw tonight to see that in fact is Saturn, not very good. Okay. I have a few devices that I'd like to show you at the front here. Firstly, this is the time switch which tracks. The camera is mounted on a swivel at the top, similar to the swivel on top of an ordinary tripod, which means you can turn the camera over in position. All you have to do is to get that on a flat surface. By flat I mean level, and sight it up to the pole, and that's set at about 38 degrees. You'll notice that I plan to do some travelling with this because I put a hinge in there. The idea being that I could set it at a particular latitude. Probably I was a little bit over-enthusiastic there because that would imply that I could get to within half a degree of the pole just by sighting it up. I suspect that I can't. However, what I normally do is when I want to take a photograph with it, I pick it up, sight up the celestial pole, set it down, open up the shutter. Unfortunately, these particular cameras have got a lock on the shutter, which means I open the shutter. I've got a suspicion that one is on the 60th. Yes, forget that for an idea. I've done another shot. Right, I open the shutter, lock it, so the shutter is now open. It's not taking an exposure at this stage. And then I'm able to just simply remove the cap by doing that. I can take the shot. I haven't got any shakes in that at all. And then when I'm finished, or a truck comes along the highway, which is quite a common event. You just do that and close the shutter. Works very well. I've done it with retinettes, non-SLR cameras. Any camera where you can lock the shutter open, you can use this technique. Of course, the technique can be used just straight on a tripod. In this case, you get star trails. These are the two cameras I use for taking the photographs of the Leonids the other night, actually. These particular ones set up for the purpose. Right, video cameras. This is the...
Just a minute, can I ask about that clock? What the hell is that clock we've got there?
That is an old SEC time switch. You know the ones that turn the hot water system on and off?
What's SEC interested in deciding your time?
No, they have 24-hour clocks which switch your hot water system on and off.
24 hours, not 23 hours, 56 minutes?
No, 24 hours. But if you remember, I was speaking there about the fact that you're only 4 minutes out in 24 hours, and after 10 minutes you tend to get a tracking error. Actually, they do have an adjustment in them, and I've been very tempted to get to that adjustment and see if I can adjust it more accurately. Again, I think I'm being a little bit over-enthusiastic because I don't think I could actually get it back accurately placed at the pole. Anyway, I found 20 minutes exposures I've done with this without any tracking error.
Are you selling these?
No, but you can buy the clocks in various places. I just picked up two at the Tyab packing house.
Yeah.
The bloke was trying to sell them out of the boot of his car to somebody at the packing house. I said, gee, what are those? I had a look at time switches and I said, what do you want for them? He said, $8 each. Oh, $8 for the two of them. And I said, oh, it's a bit expensive. But these were electrically wound ones. Most of them are electrically wound, which means you plug them into the mains for about 3 or 4 hours, they wind up and then they tick away for eight days. This one, however, is a hand wound one. I think the owner of the particular house that had this would have to sort of definitely go and wind it up once a week to make sure they got a hot water system.
Most of them wasn't working on the tip, were they?
Absolutely. I bought two for my students at the secondary school I was at for $5 each. And this was, I think, the Footscray tip. I think it was the SEC actually. It was something to do with the SEC. And they had a whole hopper full of these clocks. And I just bought two of them for $5 each. And the only reason they were $5 is because it was the storeman who showed me them. I said, well, how much are they? He said, $5. And they've been going very well. I lent them out to students at various times and had a few students take photographs with them. So I've got a couple of them at home at the moment. I've probably got 3 or 4 of them, which I'm going to sort of build up into various bits and pieces. If anyone's really enthusiastic and would like to borrow one for about 20 years, they're quite keen to come and see me. I'm sure I could make some sort of arrangement. $5. I do have a few of them, and they are very, very useful. One of the snags with them is they have a slipping clutch on them, which basically means that while they're ticking away, you can change the position. Now, that slipping clutch is not particularly good, which means you have to have a counterweight on them in order to make sure that the whole thing's balanced. Indeed, if I have that in some position, it's not too bad, is it, right? But you've got to balance it in all positions to make sure it's going to drive properly. And indeed, the other night when I was taking the Leonids, I didn't balance it properly. A lot of my shots actually trapped on it. I was a little bit over-enthusiastic there because I was watching the Leonids trying to set the camera. Sounds very well. This one is the golf ball camera, which I've gutted and remounted into a close-up ring, which is a technique I thought of about a week ago, and mounted the camera inside the close-up ring, which basically means all I have to do is to screw that to the back of the telescope, because my telescope's got a close-up ring adapter on it, and that will then enable me to point that at anything and simply take a photograph through it. As I say, the resolution of these cameras is shocking, so that one's going to be gutted again, and I'll put in probably this little camera, which is the little CCD one you saw in the presentation. This one cost me about $150, I think. I haven't really given this one a decent try. However, my son-in-law, who was trying to get in with me at the time, bought me a display, which I put into a box, complete with its own battery, and you can see quite a good image there, I hope. I think the colour balance is a little bit out, but
Rotated at 90 degrees.
you can see this. It's that way?
Yeah,
That's right. Right, so that works quite well. The resolution on this seems to be reasonable. I think this one will work on the telescope. However, I have a shotgun. They call them shotgun cameras, which are little cylindrical cameras, which I've mounted.
Lipstick cameras.
Sorry?
Lipstick cameras.
Is that what they're called, is it? I actually bought one without a housing about 3 years ago, and I mounted it to an aluminium tube. And I've built a 6-inch telescope with a nice aluminium tube, all nicely powder coated, etc., etc. And I've mounted one of these cameras on the diagonal. In other words, no diagonal, no eyepiece, no nothing. I've got to the stage of mounting it and taking it outside, putting it on my knees and having a look at Jupiter. And it works. Here's another little camera. This one's a more sensitive one. This is a black and white one. This one cost me about $100. These are relatively easy to buy. This is the lens off a movie camera. You know, an 8mm movie camera, or 16, I think it's an 8mm in this case. I got second hand. This one will possibly be put on the back of my 4-inch refractor. I've just got to remember which way around all these go. So in that one, that one, and hopefully we've got an image. So you can see there. It's probably not focused, but that CCD is very good for lining up things. It seems to work reasonably well. Oh, by the way, these are also sensitive to infrared. Sony put out one of their first cameras, and they found that they were getting complaints. I don't understand why people were actually complaining that they were able to see through swimsuits due to the fact that the infrared obviously went through swimsuits, and they had to add a filter for all their cameras in order to make sure this didn't occur anymore. And indeed, if you point this at a remote, I don't know if remotes at the moment, but at a remote control, press the button, you can see the flashes. It's a very good way of testing out your TV remote.
So where did you buy them?
These were actually, this was actually bought from Oakley Electronics in Sydney, but you can buy them relatively easily now from J-Car and various other places.
Yeah, they're all got them. Radio parts have got them.
Yeah, just about everybody has now.
You can buy them from America, they've got the C-mount already mounted on it, so the C-mount lenses straight on.
Absolutely. Incidentally, if you set this on close up and you look in the window at the front of the remote, you can see the whole printed circuit board inside through the front window, simply because they're sensitive to infrared. That does actually bring me out an important point, and that is being sensitive to infrared. If you use a reflector telescope, which lets all the infrared come through, you're actually looking at the infrared as far as some objects are concerned. I haven't tried that out yet, but that's something I'm about to have a go at in the future. By the way, there's one thing I found that was very, very useful, and that's one of these things. This has a Pentax thread on both ends, which means I can put my camera on one end, I can put my eyepiece in, put that onto the telescope, and then I can adjust the size of the image simply by winding it backwards and forwards off there. The other thing is I've just made a mount for my telescope that's actually got that built on, which makes it a lot simpler. I've been photographing through telescopes for 30 years. It's the first time I've made a decent adapter. Okay, that's about it.
You're saying in those cameras too, the mirror, with the EOS RTs with pellicle mirror, when you've got the shutter open, you're looking through it all the time because it's a pellicle mirror, yeah. I use the RTs and RSs.
Now those people who sort of were unaware of what happens with SLRs, you take the lens off, there's a little mirror there which enables me to actually look through here and see whatever the camera's seeing. Now there's no lens on it at the moment, so I can't see a damn thing except the light. However, that means you can put that on anything that's producing an image. You can put it on top of a microscope, you can put it on a telescope, or indeed you can even shine a pattern from a laser in there. The sort of pattern that you get from a laser, diffraction patterns, and actually photograph that directly without a lens. There's a whole lot of possibilities there. But what actually happens as you take a photograph is that the little mirror flips up, okay? and then at the end of the photograph, flips down. If you want to see that a little more graphically, the mirror flips up, shutter opens, right, films in the back, and then at the end of the shot, the mirror flips back down again. And that means that when you're looking through the camera, you can't see anything while the photograph's actually being taken. If any of you've managed to talk to a photographer at a wedding, you'll often hear the photographer say, well, did the flash go off? Simply because when they're looking through the camera, the very time the flash goes off is when they can't see a damn thing, so they're never quite sure where the flash. After you've done a little bit of photography, you realise you've kept the other eye open. You can buy an SLR camera. I've just bought one recently for $50, one of these. That's got a meter in it. I've had thoughts about repairing the meter, but I've decided that it's not worth it because I can use it for this sort of purpose anyway. And that's quite a good camera. They go back to the beginning of the 1980s. That was the last of the screw thread pentaxes. You have full control of the camera, unlike the modern cameras where they control you. This means you can do just about anything with them and get pretty good results.
On the Olympus OM1, a couple of those earlier cameras, they've got the mirror lock up too. You can lock the mirror up before you take the photograph, and then you won't get any blurred image if you've taken shorter time exposures.
Right, I got you. Yeah. I actually teach a subject at Chisholm called scientific photography. It's part of the LabTex course, and we try to do as many sorts of photography as we possibly can. Things like photographing TV screens, this sort of stuff as well, microscope, telescope, and a whole lot of other techniques. If any of you want to take a photograph of the TV screen, by the way, as long as your shutter speed's below a 60th, then you'll get a good image off the screen. The only snag is if anything's moving on the screen, it will tend to blur anyway. So those can blur in any situation. So you have to look for still images.
I took all the times TV just with cameras.
Yes.
As a background and cameras.
Yeah, that's right. As long as you're below a 60th of a second, you're all right. If you're any faster than a 60th of a second, see what actually happens with a shutter of this type is that at 60th of a second or less, the shutter opens like that and then closes. If you go to usually 1/125th, which is the next speed up, what happens is that the shutter starts opening and then starts closing behind it. Which basically means that the shutter is never completely open at once. Now the end result here is that you, because your frames on the TV set are once every 50th second interlaced, then this means you only get part of the picture. So you get a black line across the middle or somewhere else on the screen. Actually, the same sort of thing happens with flash photography. If you use anything greater, higher speed than a 60th, then the shutter partly opens, it's closing behind, then the flash goes off. And the first time I ever saw that in one of my students' photographs, we had half a frame. Every photograph on his film was half a frame. Couldn't understand it. It took me at least 10 minutes to work out what the heck had happened. And it's simply because the flash setting, or the setting of the shutter it used was incorrect. I don't think it was you, John. I think it was somebody, it might have been your brother, actually. I can't remember offhand.
How do you ascertain your light values then when you're taking a picture, not of a long exposure, but when you take a picture of the really bright moon?
This has through the lens metering.
Oh, you've got the meter.
So there is a meter in it. However, that only gives you a pretty rough idea, because usually your light levels are still relatively low. I find the best idea is just to simply make experience come in here and bracket the shots. So in other words, if I want to take a photograph of the moon at f8, then I would expect to have an exposure about 60th of a second on a normal moon. And I'd do one inside of that. So I'd bracket the shots and take 3 shots. It's a matter of just practice. Keep in mind that all f8 lenses, or f8 telescopes, have exactly the same image brightness. So that means any f8 camera, or any F8 telescope will have the same exposure time if pointed at the moon. The difference between them is that the longer the focal length, the bigger the image. But if you want to have an F8 telescope with an image that big, then it has to be a 26 inch in diameter or something, in order to, from head to wall in length, in order to produce an F8 image of the moon that big. So what you've got to keep in mind is the size of the image you get of the moon is purely dependent on the focal length. Nothing else at all. And therefore, if you want a 1 centimetre image, you're going to have a focal length of about 1200 millimetres. If you have at 600 millimetres, it'll only be half a centimetre.
That's an effective focal length.
Effective focal.
It doesn't have to be the focal length of the primary.
Focal length of the objective, yes. If you're at the...
You might have some other device or some means of...
Oh, I see.
jacking it up, yeah.
So if you're supplementing eyepieces and thinking everything changes. And keep in mind that the brightness is purely the F value. Focal length divided by effective diameter, assuming it's circular in diameter, then that will tell you how bright the image is going to be. So those are the two things you need to know. Focal length to give you the image size, and the F value in order to give you the image brightness. Once you know those two, you can use somebody else's camera to do the measurements for you, and then translate them over to your camera, which is rather useful if you haven't got a light meter built into your camera.
Just, can I ask a question about the boy down the end of the pier?
Yep.
I photographed the sun using a incandescent filter.
Yes.
Now, would that work with the boy down the end of the pier?
Should.
Because you're dealing with a silhouette.
Yes.
So he's going to block the light.
All that's going to happen is the sun comes up in the background and it's going to be a silhouette against
It's
it.
going to block the light, and so it should work.
I've got a photograph off the web at home of a high-flying passenger aircraft, bang in the middle of the sun. With a beautiful trail out back. I've seen other photographs of various other objects that have been passing across the sun.
Did you arrange that aircraft in front of the sun?
No, I didn't. That's off the web. No, I haven't been that lucky. Occasionally you do get birds in photographs.
Yeah, I've seen them in the telescope.
Yeah. And I've also had one experience. I actually didn't have the experience. I was in the dome at the time, at Aurora, where a meteor went through the field of 3 telescopes at once. All 3 telescopes, this is the 26 inch, the 8 inch and the 5 inch, were all set up on the same object. And somebody at each of the telescopes looking. And I was actually in the dome at the time, facing the other direction. The whole back of the dome lit up, and 3 people all yelled at once. Yes. So the meteor actually went right through the field. So that sort of thing occasionally happens. I've also had a few friends, good observers, who've seen some very strange things. One said he saw a light, a white triangle go across the face of the moon while he was looking through a telescope. And he hadn't been drinking. He was actually a good observer, so there was no reason to disbelieve him. He didn't actually figure out what that was all about.
Probably a weather balloon.
Could be.
The weather balloons have a triangle.
That's right, the radar reflector on the corner reflector might come up on it as well. Yeah, that's a possibility. Yeah, some of the radiosonde balloons have got the big reflector on. And of course you're going up on reasonably high power, which means these things can be 1,000 feet up and come up on it. We used to follow hydrogen-filled balloons with a telescope. And you can follow them when there's no wind about, so they're almost going straight up. You can follow them for an hour. Actually, we had a best one at Northern Technical School one day, where we saw one go up into a cloud and burst, and then followed the piece down. That was with a 4-inch reflector. It was just pure luck. But that's actually rather a good way of learning how to track a telescope. Back in the 1960s, we used to follow Echo 1, which was a big balloon satellite, a luminised balloon. I think it was about 20 foot across, I can't remember. But Echo 1 was one of the brightest objects in the sky, when it was in the sky. And we used to use the 26-inch telescope, and we'd have people controlling the 26-inch telescope. The 26-inch telescope in those days had a thing like a big handle on it, and these two people would be down the bottom, and there'd be somebody up at the eyepiece, sort of being thrown around, and the idea was to try and track this across the sky using a 26 inch. We successfully did a few times, but nearly killed ourselves in the attempt. Because it's a very heavy telescope. You probably have mentioned at the beginning I was a foundation member of the Astronomical Society of Ballarat back in 1956, 57.
No,
58,
1958.
wasn't it?
Formed in 1958.
Right, it's 1958, and it was around that time. Actually, the ASV sent a group up, especially to enthuse the area, and tried to start the society up. The ASV were in fact responsible for starting the National Society of Ballarat. And that worked really well in those days. We got the 26 inch going and various other things. I remember the first time I saw the Orion Nebula through the 26 inch telescope. Just been illuminized. Just about blinded. Are there any other general questions? Yep.
One.
This camera allows you to take a sequential picture without film advancing?
Say that again?
This camera allows you to take sequential pictures without film advancing.
You obviously could do that, but the only snag, of course, is that the camera mustn't move in the meantime, otherwise you'll spoil the other image. You're talking about doing double exposures or even triple exposures.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, well, if you had a very firm mounting, you could actually, every time a car went past, you could pop the cap on and wait and take the cap back off again and take up from where you left off.
I think what you're saying is it's got shots of the moon, one there, and then one there, and one there.
Oh, I see.
And then you just press the button.
Yeah, sure. You could do that. One of the problems with this particular camera is that you tend to advance the film a little bit, even with the little button pushed to the bottom. So it's never quite completely stable.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a bit of a problem, actually.
What you do is just machine an adapter like I do and put the CompuShutter shutter on it.
That's right.
And then you don't
Separate
have that
shutter,
problem.
yeah.
Or use the Canon EOS again. You can program it for as many shots as you like. With no movement.
I don't know. I'm sort of a grassroots person myself. I tend to go for the simplest possible camera I can lay my hands on.
Oh, you're still doing it.
One of your tracking camera images was of an Iridian satellite. How did you get it dead centre?
Luck. After a while, you learn to... actually, what I usually do with them is I get the star map for that particular moment, and what they publish is the direction. Actually, they publish the altitude and azimuth. And what you do is you put a circle on the star map on the altitude, and then work around to the azimuth, and then compare it with the star background, and then point the camera at that. Admittedly, it's a 50mm lens, which means you've got a reasonably wide field.
So there's a little bit of preparation.
Yeah, I actually got on to Heavens Above, which is the website that says this, and tried to get them to publish the right ascension and declination of the actual flare. I didn't actually get a reply. I suspect it was way beyond what they'd like to do.
There's a program called a Rid Flare which you can download off the net and do your own calculations.
Yeah.
And that gives you a printout with our own deck of the maximum.
I'm not prepared to go to that sort of trouble. I sort of judge it. I've got another shot actually of a double Iridian flare with a much further apart. We understand it's right on the edge of the negative.
If you're not very far out, you can put a slide copier on the end of your bellows and you can adjust the lateral and vertical and you can recopy it and get it in the middle if you want to do.
There's a few tricks involved, but with Iridian flares you sort of get used to where they're going to actually occur. I haven't seen any daylight ones yet. Has anyone ever seen any daylight ones?
Yeah, well, yeah, because daylight because the sun's about to rise.
Yeah.
That's when daylight sort of 5 minutes before sunset, you set the daylight. That's really down there.
Anyone else got any comments to make?
I've just got one question. Where's the place to get your film sort of developed? Because if you take it to the second place, they might say, well, there's nothing on here.
Well, I reckon Dramana.
And where you say Dramana,
there's a photographic shop in Woomera, and the person who runs that, the young lady who he employs to do the processing is very good. She has got used to my photographs to some degree now, and she sort of, as I walk through the door, she sort of goes, oh, no. But no, she really is exceptional. And as well as that, she's prepared to redo them a number of times if necessary to get the right contrast. So she is very, very good indeed. And as she's responsible for the changing in the colour too. So she actually changes the process slightly, just specifically to change the colour.
With black and white film, I've heard, is it reasonably easy to develop it yourself? Like,
absolutely. Oh yeah, that's
not colour, but stuff like Kodak TechPan. I've heard of people easily developing it.
The problem with TechPan is that you can't get small rolls of it in Australia anymore.
What do you mean small rolls? Is in number of shots on the roll?
36 shot rolls. You've got to buy a bulk roll.
Right.
You
a
can.
bulk roll of TechPan is about 300.
You can. I use Polaroid. Like the Polaroid have a 35mm transparency black and white, and you can just buy the little machine. You can process it yourself straight away.
Oh yeah,
it comes out very good.
No,
it's a bit more expensive, but it's.
Yeah, I think the gentleman here is talking particularly about a particular film, namely Technical Pan, which is a very strange film because it actually, if you use it as a copying film, the final photograph you get has got better resolution than the original. It sharpens edges. It's a really, really, really strange film.
TechPan's what they use for camera testing for lens resolution.
Yes, it is really an exceptional film. Very, very good.
I know out of all the extra photos I've seen in terms of resolution, TechPan is just it. You look at some of the photos off on the web, like Marty Germano's and Kim Zussman in the US, been on their websites and so on. The resolution in some of those
Well,
photos
I have one
sensational.
36 roll of Technical Pan sitting at home, and I've been loath to use it because I know it's the only one I've got and I know the one I'm likely to get. With Technical Pan, you don't even, what you do is you make up the developer right at the beginning when you're ready to use it, and in fact you don't even wait for it to cool down, you put ice in it and a measured quantity of ice to bring it to the right temperature. And instead of pouring the developer into the tank, you actually turn the lights off and lower the film quietly into the developer and put the lid on. Just let it stand for a minute. And so there's different techniques of getting the best resolution. Exceptional film. Most of my stuff's done on originally Tri-X and now HP5. FP4 for solar photography and HP5 for anything else.
So the black and white films is harder to get that now, though. I mean, you wouldn't think there'd be a lot of demand for them commercially.
HP5 is still available in bulk rollers.
Oh,
Buy
yeah.
bulk roll HP5 for $30.
HP4 and HP5 are still
Yeah.
by the Ted's camera and Frankston.
You can't buy the newer black and white films in bulk rolls anymore. Whether you could or not in the past, I don't know. What's the latest black and white films that
With the
puts out?
C41 process.
No, black and white.
Oh, you're the Trimax and
Max, that's right. Those black and white ones you can't buy in bulk
T-Max.
roll. I tried to buy them in bulk roll, I couldn't. Whereas HP5, no problems. You can buy them in bulk roll, and I might put 4 shots in a camera just specifically for a particular purpose, and just develop them in a standard developer like ID11 or something like that. But it still works. I got to use a digital camera the other day, and I'm rather scared. I own 5 of these, and I don't really want to know about digital cameras at the moment. I've got a suspicion that once I get into digital cameras, I may not get back to film, and I'll have these 5 cameras. Unless, of course, they come up with a 35mm CCD, which you can plug on the back.
you got them.
Oh, they've got them all right. Well, they're $15,000 or something.
Are they?
Yeah, something like that. Because the failure rate in CCDs is very high. This means that when you make a small one, you've got a better chance of getting a good one than if you make a big one. And they still haven't got the process good enough to be sure that we're going to get it.
120 is a good size format too. 120, you get good resolution on that because you're getting bigger 4.5. I've got a lot of 4.5s, and geez, they're bloody beautiful, clear and big. If you want
C41, the C41 process of colour films is relatively easy to do yourself, and you can push process it. I've used Ektachrome, which is slide film. High-speed Ektachrome you can process using what's called the E6 process. I haven't used the E6, I've used the E4, which is the older version. And you can push process it and triple its speed, and that's not bad. It's far better than Kodachrome. Ektachrome is a much better film. But, those are basically films. Technical pan, as I say, is one I will be using sometime in the future. Because, but you have, I think you can import it from the United States in 35mm rolls, but you certainly can't buy it other than in bulk rolls. Another one I've used is fine grain positive. Fine grain positive is an ortho film, a very slow ortho film, very good for copying, almost no grain, but insensitive, of course, to red. But you can use it for solar photography a bit. The main advantage is you don't have to have the lights all off, you can use a safe light with it. Any other questions? I think we're sort of getting the wind down here.
I'm sure if you have any more questions, John will be more than happy to answer them if you wish to come down the front. And thank you very much for obviously on a subject that you're very passionate about, you've had a lot of experience in. And if we didn't show John our appreciation.
If in fact you have any other questions in the future, John Cleverton and I sort of get together once in a while, and I'm sure he'll pass any messages on or ask for any contacts that you're interested in. I occasionally go on top of Arthur's seat and take some shots. Feel like it.
Thank you. We'll see you all here at 3rd Wednesday of January. Very good.
Tell me about give us a clear name out in the backyard and just give me a ring. 26.
Yeah, there'll be room in there. I'll be bringing the table. Work out we can fit it in some of the
Which was the Aurora?
I don't know, I've got one up.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. And the video out.
And can I do all notes?
Oh,
Here's the one that shows you.
yeah, I can strip some notes.
You want to do that? Except you wouldn't want to try and find
People, they didn't do, it was only tonight they sold like hotcakes.
Oh, yes, money.
Yeah, but they didn't sell very well last meeting.
Yeah, well, I'll definitely go for one. I don't think you will break the bank.
No. Okay. I'll bring you one.
Time to go.
What happened to that? There was a lid here, there was a...
I don't know.
There was a lid.
I just came over to it.
Plastic lid.
I've got no idea.
The plastic lid was sitting on the table. It just disappeared. Oh, do you want to get another one? No, doesn't.
The table was only there. Well, hang on. It's just what is this got now?
Oh, it doesn't matter. It's only a plastic.
Aha!
Under the paper. Under the
thingamajig.
What's the resolution?
I can give you his phone number or Monday night. A really good view of the Alex Nebula with the O3 filter. It's quite fun, isn't it?
My father was really nice week of the service. Comes up in she's been doing these tests all week long, so she's been really groggy. That year. Same stage as last minute. Well, that's right.
I'll try to catch up on sleep still.
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, you can spend
I wanted to go through that tape and get those numbers. I mean, I had 3:45 minutes side to